Lord of Mysteries. Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 303 to 312. Chapter 303, 302 Gale. Solving the problem of spiritual pollution on a concept level should be something that 2 class, or even 1 class ritualists would need to face. And the hints about the source of this pollution are actually quite obvious. Klein glanced at his feet. Who knew what chaotic things were hidden beneath this compacted earth? Whether it was the distorted station signs, the black smoke from burning people, or those snail people, whirlpool people, and now the strong winds and heavy rain, all these things originated from something underground. Did this thing truly exist? Klein couldn't help but think, if this thing existed and could cause the entire town to become abnormal, it must be something on the level of a 1 class sealed artifact, or even reach the level of a 0 class sealed artifact that could affect the world's structure, to be able to achieve such a large-scale anomaly and conceptual pollution. But no matter what it was, in short, it wasn't anything good. Klein also didn't think that he, a Sequence 9, could see through any problems or solve problems of this level. But if a Sequence 9 couldn't figure it out, why not try going above the gray fog? As soon as this thought popped into Klein's mind, his consciousness blurred for a moment. Neither Furs nor Anderson beside him noticed the black silk top hat that flashed across their teammates' eyes. The hat seemed to be holding something, and it gently placed itself on Klein's head. The idea of going above the gray fog and using the mysterious space above the gray fog to examine the core problem of this place was quickly dissuaded by rapidly surging thoughts such as, might be discovered by that Nicholas Flamel, there is clearly a great anomaly here, and, cannot expose this point, as well as the secret that I am a transmigrator, for now, forming a self-consistent and seamless logic. Klein's consciousness was deceived, but he himself didn't realize it. He just didn't know why, but Klein always had an urge to pull something out of his pocket and put it in his right eye socket. Too strange. Finally, Klein still felt too awkward. He shook his inexplicably dizzy head and forced himself to ignore this somewhat strange thought. Nicola watched Tang leisurely swaying in a rocking chair, while pinching a monocle and secretly watching the live stream with the lazy system, and while holding a glass of happy fat house water in a goblet, swaying and appreciating it. Who was it before who kept saying, all monocles should die, and monocle phobia? Now he was quite enthusiastic about making others wear monocles. Tang. Hee. System. Hee. Nicola. Klein and his group braved the heavy rain and entered the streets of Black Vortex Town, where it was still pouring. They planned to go to the seaside, to the lighthouse, to check the situation before the anomaly of the entire Black Vortex Town reached a critical point, and clear the test as quickly as possible. But for some reason, the wind and rain, which had been getting smaller, had become so strong since the afternoon that Klein and the others felt like they would be blown away by the rain and wind. The wind was abnormally strong. A typhoon is coming. Klein's expression was not good. Furs, on the other hand, used her apprentice's door-opening ability to borrow a lot of food from other places and was currently gnawing on her lunch. They had to solve their own food and clothing problems. In this environment, unless they were sequences with extremely strong survival abilities that could function without eating, drinking, or defecating for a short period, hunger would lead to a decrease in their state and mental value, causing quite serious consequences. And this increasingly bad natural weather was an obstacle, both for the residents of Black Vortex Town and for them. There's a very strange sound coming from afar. Anderson looked outside at the rain, which was being blown by the wind like bullets hitting the walls and glass, and frowned. The way the sound is pronounced is very strange. It should be a variation of ancient Hermes, but the speaker doesn't sound like a human. This is like telling a ghost story. Furs complained weakly. She didn't know if her choice to hide in Tingen City after using that strange magical item and hearing the maddening whispers during the full moon, and then choosing to spend 50 gold pounds to sign up for this exam for the Tingen City Professional Ritualist Subsidy, was the right one. But given the current situation, Furs felt that if she could, she would definitely write a novel with horror as the main theme. Putting everything else aside, the Black Vortex Town, this strange and uncomfortable examination hall with a touch of mysticism, really gave Furs a lot of writing inspiration. This was much more terrifying than the strange short stories Rosal the Great had written before. Well, it might also be because the information that can be conveyed and the sense of reality felt are different between text and audio. Furs couldn't help but mutter. And soon, Klein and the others heard clearly and knew where the strange sound Anderson mentioned came from. Outside the window, the sky was in turmoil. The sky, which they hadn't seen since entering here, at the horizon where it met the sea, a tiny but visible object, still constantly enlarging, was slowly moving towards them. Looking in that direction, Klein's gaze froze. Although he had a premonition that this day would eventually come, Klein still couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Neither he nor the original owner had ever seen such a scene except in television, newspapers, and book photos. It was a giant tornado at sea. Countless waves were rolling back and flying towards the sky, accompanied by the changes in the clouds. It was like the center of Black Vortex Town, a whirlpool that could swallow everything. Typhoon. That strange, noisy sound, fragmented by the wind, came from the typhoon that was slowly approaching them and looking bigger and bigger. The typhoon was about to make landfall. Inside the examination hall, on the third day, the typhoon made landfall in Black Vortex Town. In this terrible weather, even trees would be uprooted directly, and people simply couldn't go out. Klein and the others were forced to stay in the dilapidated house where they had rested on the first night, using ritual magic to prevent this house, which looked like it was about to collapse, from being blown away by this terrible weather. Now, neither people nor monsters were anywhere to be seen. Going out in this weather was just seeking death. Even monsters with low intelligence who only acted on instinct would definitely stay indoors based on the idea of seeking advantage and avoiding harm. But even in such weather, there were still people on the road. It was a very tall, slender woman wearing a black dress, a pointed hat, and with a pale, long face, who looked weightless. She held a black umbrella and strolled in the rain. Her slender body, from the side, was as thin as a piece of white paper, but neither the strong wind nor the heavy rain had wet even a corner of this woman's clothes. This lady, who was leisurely and aimlessly walking in the heavy rain, stared straight ahead, ignoring the strange noises constantly coming from both sides of the houses, and not looking at the distorted and deformed bodies of the whirlpool people and snail people reflected on the glass windows. The monsters confined in the houses were watching this lady, watching her disappear into the rain curtain, gradually moving further away under their gaze. Soon, this lady swayed past a dilapidated house. This ruined house looked precarious under the wind and rain, and there were no signs of anyone moving inside, but the lady holding the black umbrella uncharacteristically did not directly pass by this dilapidated house. Instead, she stopped in front of it. She stood there, seemingly looking around and searching for something. Then, the lady walking in the rain slowly approached the shattered glass, as if wanting to see what was inside. Separated by a layer of glass, Klein held his breath, looking at that thin, pale face, which looked like it was painted on. This face, combined with this background. Rain Lady. This name popped into Klein's mind. Furs and Anderson both saw the lady with the umbrella facing Klein, and they both came over. Furs subconsciously glanced at the areas of several ritual magic in the corner. The candles there had not gone out, and the ritual magic was still effective. Logically, they, who were in a hidden state, should not, and could not, have been discovered. This is something called a Rain Lady. Klein turned his head and looked at Anderson and Furs. This thing will follow pedestrians who appear in the rain and take out its umbrella to shield them from the wind and rain. Sounds like a good thing. Furs looked at the Rain Lady outside, whose face was as pale as a dead person's, her eyes slightly lowered, half open and half closed, and couldn't help but complain. Anyway, if she saw this thing holding an umbrella for her, she felt it would be best to run as far away as possible. No. Klein turned his neck stiffly and added, this thing is not a good thing either. It is a symbol of bad luck. As long as we encounter this thing and it follows us, our luck will keep getting worse. Things that are within reach will be lost due to accidents, monsters that could clearly be avoided will directly encounter us, and dangerous areas we didn't plan to go to will be entered prematurely due to various kinds of bad luck. This is a wandering monster with an 80% or higher chance of a party wipe as long as you encounter it. Klein rummaged through his mind for things that Pedigree and Tang had popularized to him in the more common, professional ritual magic level test. Monsters like the Rain Lady appear irregularly and randomly in various 3 inches class, 2 class, and 1 class examination halls. They are wandering monsters that appear in the examination halls, and their figures may be seen in multiple examination halls. And if you encounter them, according to the official explanation of the Miskatonic University, Ritualist Qualification Certification Office, this monster itself is for balancing the difficulty and adjusting the pass rate. To put it simply, if your luck is too bad, and to maintain the pass rate, then just accept your bad luck. After all, In the extraordinary world, bad luck is truly bad luck. The Rain Lady's half-closed, half-open eyelids met Klein's gaze through a layer of broken glass for a long time. Then, she slowly walked back into the rain curtain, gradually moving away, as if going to other places. Klein heard Fur's sigh of relief. His heartbeat also involuntarily quickened. Klein always kept a distance from things that looked like people but weren't, and had a strong urban legend feel. But soon, he realized that the few of them had breathed a sigh of relief too early. Klein watched with his own eyes as another Rain Lady came from the direction the previous one had come from. She was still wearing the same clothes, had the same appearance, a pale face, and half-closed, half-open eyes. She held an umbrella and approached the seemingly empty house again, seemingly examining the inside. Fur suddenly called out in a low voice, "The burning speed of the candles in the corner is accelerating." Klein and Anderson quickly looked over. The candles supporting the operation of the ritual magic in the corner had been burning 3 or 4 times faster than usual since the appearance of the Rain Lady. Anderson suddenly turned his head again, looking at the extremely pale face of the Rain Lady, which was very close to the broken window outside. He said in a low voice, "This thing is also approaching. This new one is closer than the previous one." Klein's heart sank slightly. Is this definitely making us leave here? It should be. It's also a mechanism, like our growing hair. But going out in this weather was quite dangerous, and they couldn't guarantee that the Rain Lady wouldn't follow them and bring them bad luck after they went out. Soon, the Rain Lady, just like the previous time, slowly left the window, holding her umbrella, and disappeared into the end of the rain curtain. But immediately after, a third Rain Lady appeared. Following the actions of the previous 2 Rain Ladies, she still stopped when passing the dilapidated house, looked over, and brought her face close to the glass, examining the inside. In the corner, the candles used to maintain the ritual magic flared up again. This time, Klein saw that the Rain Lady's face was pressed tightly against the glass, and her eyelashes were clearly visible on her pale, half-closed, half-open eyelids. She extended her pale, thin, long hand, which was not holding an umbrella, and knocked on the damaged glass window. Go. The next moment, the candles used to support the ritual magic in the corner went out. The power of darkness and concealment disappeared. The Rain Lady outside the window seemed to have realized there was someone inside. Her figure passed through the wall of the house, holding her umbrella, and slowly walked into this house, which was still constantly dripping. Klein, Anderson, and Furs immediately jumped out of the other dilapidated window. Then, they encountered strong winds and were blown into the air, their bodies getting further and further away from the ground. Chapter 304, 303 The Intruders. In the fierce wind, the hair of Klein, Furs, and Anderson grew longer and longer. At the ends of their hair, the whirlpools became increasingly obvious. The hair with whirlpools seemed like it could come alive at any moment, tightening around their necks and strangling them directly. They were getting higher and higher from the ground. The typhoon itself, which had been over the sea a short while ago, had made landfall at some point. The immense wind blew buildings off the ground, lifting flowers, trees, and many things from the streets into the air, pushing them constantly upward. Klein Moretti, Furs Wall, Anderson Hood, that was the voice from the eye of the typhoon. The unclear voice Anderson had heard before originated from here. This typhoon was calling out the names of these outsiders. His mental strength dropped drastically. Klein suppressed the urge to vomit and looked down. Below him, the scene of Black Vortex Town became increasingly blurry. But looking down from this perspective, Klein's expression changed slightly. The layout of the town's buildings seemed to be gradually changing towards the direction of a whirlpool. In the strong wind, it was difficult for Klein and the others to stabilize themselves. Both Furs and Klein were only sequence 9s. If they fell, they would certainly die. In this state, it was also impossible for them to light 3 candles and use ritual magic to solve the problem. What to do? Within Euclidean space, Tang was leisurely watching the live broadcast while lying on a rocking chair, using a monocle. Superstar Dominator is a great existence who controls heaviness and density. The black hole he sent in can serve as a passage connecting the inside and outside, and it also possesses all the functions of a black hole. He waved his hand slightly, and a subtle whirlpool was thus created. This wind was weak at first, but after leaving Tang's side, it grew larger and faster, gradually turning into a gale that swept across the entire Euclidean space. Nicola reached out and pressed his hat down, preventing it from being blown away by the gale Tang had casually created. This Angel King looked at the scene in the level 3 feet examination room, his light eyes moving slightly. And the whirlpool itself possesses the symbolism of attraction, whether it's physical, in terms of mysticism, or in terms of spirit. Similar to this is the law of Beander characteristic convergence. Don't you find it interesting? Every Beander is like a black hole, just with differences in the strength of their gravity. The stronger the Beander, the greater their convergent effect on others, the stronger the effect of the whirlpool they produce, and the easier it is to attract the attention of others. Finally, they merge together, undergoing qualitative change, and become the largest and most terrifying mysticism black hole in this world. The Creator is resurrected, converges all Beander characteristics, kills all great existences, destroys this world, and gives birth to a new world. This is somewhat similar to the state of the universe itself. The universe, which has been constantly expanding outwards, will one day stop, then shrink inwards, and finally everything will return to a singularity, and then continue to explode. The birth of a new world represents the demise of the old world. Of course, all great existences, in this state where the Creator is fully awakened, should not be able to escape. Are you suspecting that Superstar Dominator possesses a certain authority that can directly influence the law of Beander characteristic convergence? Although he is a great existence on the material side, the real world side, the symbolic meaning of heaviness can indeed point to this part, but it's too early to consider these now. Tang snapped his fingers, and the gale sweeping across the entire Euclidean space quickly subsided. He stood up and said to Nicola, "I'm going to arrange some other matters. Are you preparing to let the actors leave the stage?" I guess so," Tang shrugged. After all, before the events in Tingen City end, at least Klein's hatred must be firmly placed on the original witch, hidden sage, and true creator, right? As for the original witch and true creator negotiating cooperation with him, what does that have to do with Klein? As for the hidden sage, the Moses ascetic order has already been mostly gnawed away by the marionettes. Breaking through there, or directly capturing the hidden sage, killing him, and taking the uniqueness and the sequence 1 knowledge Emperor's Beander characteristic is only a matter of time. However, the current hatred can still be maintained for a while. Tang glanced at his system panel again. My potion is almost digested. When the exam is over, I should go to the Stormy Sea to slightly resolve the issue of his agreement with the Black Knight Goddess. Tang paused, then looked at Nicola. Keep an eye on those in Backland. I probably won't have that much energy in Ruin later. The trouble left by Salinger needs to be resolved, and the things in the Eternal Darkness River also need further processing. Regarding the source material issue, Tang had to put most of his attention on the Death Pathway's uniqueness and the preparations Salinger left behind. And, during this time, having already digested the Cryptic Servant's Beander characteristic, he needed to act as an anchor, responding to the past, present, and future, completing the spacetime cycle. Tang thought about how many times his past self had borrowed power from the future, and suddenly felt a headache. Indeed, debts owed must be repaid one day. Regarding the problem with Te Lisi Kike, you can arrange a 3-in-1 hotpot then, put the two of them together, and let the problem go to the problem. A witch returning for revenge, a red priest, trapped for 1,000 years. Tang was quite looking forward to seeing what kind of trouble these two could stir up. Also, Te Lisi Kike seems to have discovered that there's something wrong with Backland. A smile appeared on Tang's lips. Nicola was a little surprised. Te Lisi Kike, he discovered your marionettes. Perhaps, after all, it's something done by the power infiltrated by the high-dimensional overseer in the Ring of Destiny. With abilities involving fate and observation, it's normal for their intuition and inspiration to be strong. Tang said cheerfully, but it's also very interesting, isn't it? Whether it was for him or for Te Lisi Kike, this strange, reborn, person, it should be the same. If they just followed the same old path from their previous life without any changes, then it would truly be meaningless. The capital of Ruin Kingdom, the city of 10,000 cities, Backland. Triss had quickly gathered Beander materials and been promoted based on her memories from before she woke up in this world. She had completed her acting and digested the witch potion in a very short time, and was currently using her memories to collect the corresponding Beander characteristics and auxiliary materials for the Pleasure Witch in Backland. For Beyonders who had successfully acted and fully digested potions before, the time required for reacting would be much shorter. This meant they could stabilize their state and speed up the digestion of potions faster than ordinary Beyonders. This was also why vengeful spirits who were formerly Beyonders could use Beyonder abilities almost without acting after obtaining Beyonder characteristics, and were almost never driven more insane by not acting. This could be considered a form of pre-acting. However, after Triss entered this city of 10,000 cities, Backland, which was both familiar and strange to her, Triss discovered something was wrong. There weren't many riots here, and the East Borough wasn't as chaotic as the Triss of the past had seen, but these weren't the points that made her feel something was wrong. Sometimes, the people here gave Triss a non-human illusion. Among 10 people she passed by, there would always be 2 or 3 who gave her this feeling. But afterwards, no matter whether Triss followed, divined, or used other methods to investigate these people she thought were problematic, the result was always, what's wrong with these people? They are completely normal. This was the conclusion. At an underground Beyonder item trading gathering in Backland, having returned to the ranks of witches, she once again keenly sensed the slightly strange gazes around her. These gazes were hidden but full of scrutiny, and the inorganic gazes and indifferent expressions were all too familiar to Talisi Kike, who was once the Despair Witch. The people of Backland were very strange, no, they were quite strange. As an experienced witch, Triss pretended to adjust her clothes, took out a palm-sized silver mirror from her pocket, and used it to look at the others around her. It was normal, just like the last time she saw them, and the time before that. These people had no abnormal state at all, but this feeling of being watched made Triss feel a sense of strangeness and distortion. This illusion that every passerby, every pair of eyes, and the people walking on the street from time to time all exuded an inorganic coldness, like monsters without spirits and self-awareness. Triss had never encountered such a strange thing. Next item for purchase, the Eye of a Succubus. This was the item Triss requested. The Eye of a Succubus was a main material for the Pleasure Witch, and the source of her main material when she was promoted to Pleasure Witch before. Triss lowered her long eyelashes, remaining silent. But just as the black-robed person hosting the meeting said this, Triss, who was immersed in her memories, felt a slight tremor in her spiritual intuition. Her gaze suddenly shot towards a certain wall. The experienced witch's body suddenly disappeared, and she quickly shrank into the mirror she held in her hand. While everyone was still stunned, fire and the bright light of an explosive impact suddenly erupted from the wall Triss had been staring at. The entire wall exploded with a bang, sending fragments flying everywhere. While the people at the gathering scattered in panic, someone rushed into the location of this mysticism gathering. The official Beyonders are here. Run! Most of the people at this gathering had taken forbidden pathways, or had committed arson, murder, and robbery, and were already problematic. After suddenly hearing such a sentence, they all scattered and fled, completely ignoring others and those behind them. They simply used their respective Beyonder abilities, or simply threw the people next to them backward, trying to gain as much time as possible. Triss hid in the mirror, watching their panicked escape, and let out a sneer. Humans, they are indeed such despicable creatures. But some stood abnormally indifferently on the spot, watching the Beyonders who had suddenly burst in. Kill them, these guys are no longer alive. A high-pitched, powerful male voice rang out. In the dusty basement, along with this male voice, followed by the Beyonders who were standing indifferently on the spot simultaneously taking action. The two groups seemed to know each other and both wanted to kill the other in a short time. During the firefight, Triss indifferently watched what was happening at the gathering through the mirrors she had marked in advance. Although she was not yet the Despair Witch, she could still use the Beyonder abilities that only the Despair Witch could utilize, for some reason, even as a witch. These people were clearly unable to sense that a demigod was hiding in the mirror, coldly observing everything that had suddenly occurred. The intruders had a higher sequence. They seemed to have brought some sealed artifacts. The gathering members were clearly no match for the intruders, and the intruders seemed to know these gathering members very well. They all held a very strange weapon, like the small knives used to cut ropes that secured goods in the port on a daily basis. Those small knives all emitted a spiritual radiance, they were Beyonder weapons. And whenever that small knife, flashing with bright silver light, slashed across the heads or bodies of those gathering Beyonders, those gathering Beyonders would fall to the ground like puppets with cut strings, and then be shot in the head by the intruders who seized the opportunity. Triss's gaze shifted slightly. She used the mirror to reflect the bodies of several of the killed gathering Beyonders, and before their spirits completely disappeared, she captured their spirits into the mirror world. But These are spirits that died long ago. Are these marionettes? Triss narrowed her eyes, instinctively remembering a person. Dunn Smith, or rather, Gairman Sparrow. But would that person make so many ordinary, mundane marionettes? Clearly impossible. Triss had the answer in her heart. She did not appear in the real world, still hiding in the mirror world. After confirming that the guys who gave her a strange feeling were all marionettes, Triss narrowed her eyes. Why hadn't she thought of killing these people and examining their spirits before? If she had, Triss should have long ago come to the conclusion that these strange guys were all marionettes of a certain marionettist. I was deceived, Triss murmured to herself. This reminded Triss of some unpleasant memories. She shook her head. No, it's not certain that this is deception. Other pathways also have similar abilities. For example, the audience pathway. But the biggest problem now was, who was controlling so many marionettes, and what was his, or her, purpose? Triss's expression shifted slightly. She looked at the intruders who killed those marionettes, and a slight smile appeared on her lips. They seem to know these marionettes very well, or rather, they know the marionettist behind these marionettes very well. Chapter 305, 304 The Resistors. The leader of this group of intruders was a man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s, with a burly and strong physique, wearing a fitted black uniform. A long scar extended from his cheekbone to the corner of his mouth, and his expression was fierce and cold. Holding a revolver, he fired several shots at the marionettes on the ground with swift efficiency. While their spirit-body threads were severed and before they could reconnect, he directly blew their heads off. The heads of the marionettes whose spirit-body threads had been cut instantly exploded, spraying white and red matter everywhere. The spirit-body threads on the slain marionettes swayed and stretched out once more, seemingly drifting towards a certain direction, but soon, with the marionettes' deaths and the dissipation of their spirits, they reluctantly shattered and vanished. Before long, all that remained was a ground covered in remnants, heads blown off, bodies dismembered, or simply riddled with multiple gunshots, their hearts and other vital organs completely destroyed, along with a few people clearing away the corpses. Captain, this batch of marionettes has been dealt with. One person, whose left hand was fractured and twisted, wincing slightly in pain, walked up to the burly man in his 30s or 40s who was leading the group and whispered, "The other teams should have pretty much succeeded too, it's just." He fell silent for a moment, then lowered his head and said, "Chain is dead." Shirless slowly turned his head to look at the man with the twisted left arm, remained silent for a while, and then said, "Chain is dead. These damn things, who is controlling them? And why are they doing this?" Beside him, another person dragging a corpse, preparing to take it away to extract its Beander characteristics, cursed under his breath. What does that guy hiding behind the scenes want? It's been so long, he doesn't even dare to show his face, just constantly converting marionettes, converting, and then what? Is he, or she, planning to fill every corner of ruin with those neither human nor ghost, neither yin nor yang, neither right nor wrong things, putting on a silent play? Shirless slowly exhaled and said in a deep voice, "All right, hurry up and leave here before the official extraordinary arrive." Official extraordinary? Heh, these guys are really ridiculous, Captain. Why don't we just kill the marionettes among the official extraordinary and avenge Griffin and Hender? Another person dragging a corpse cursed fiercely, thinking about just killing the official extraordinary as well. It's truly ridiculous that even institutions under the orthodox churches, like the official extraordinary, have marionettes controlled by a marionettist. Some of them have even reached high positions, controlling entire teams under the official extraordinary, making it harder and harder for us wild beyonders, those who have discovered the truth, to survive. No, Shirless calmly rejected the suggestion of the person who wanted to fight the official extraordinary to the death. They couldn't win. Fighting against the official organization was meaningless and would only result in more severe casualties. In this situation, unless the church can self-investigate their organizational structure, find the marionettes in high positions, and deal with them, the official extraordinary will only be enemies, not allies. Captain, Simon, whose hand was twisted and injured, couldn't help but look at Shirless again. These things are becoming more and more frequent lately. I have a feeling the mastermind behind it is about to appear. A lucky one's intuition is always quite strong and accurate. Just as Shirless was about to say something, a broken mirror in front of him suddenly flashed with light. "Get back." His expression changed, and he raised his gun to shoot at the mirror. But Triss was faster. She directly grabbed the ankle of the man with the bent arm, and amidst Simon's scream, he was swiftly dragged into the mirror world by Triss. The bullet hit the rapidly dimming mirror. The mirror, which contained the mirror world, shattered with a crack, but the person who had just been there had already vanished. He was dragged into the world inside the mirror, and no one present had the beyonder ability to pass through the mirror and enter the world inside it. Simon. In the fragmented ground world of collapsed houses, people quickly arrived. The leader was a man wearing a black clergyman's robe, with a calm, unruffled face that carried a sense of the tranquility of night. Surround this area. Don't let anyone approach, and don't let anyone leave. Yes, deacon. The deacon of the Black Knight Church's night watchers nodded and then lightly tapped his teeth. A huge spirit appeared above the collapsed building and began to permeate downwards. Basement. Watching something that was likely a spirit world creature continuously permeating downwards from the ceiling, Shirless gritted his teeth. After realizing that official extraordinary had arrived, Shirless could only choose to abandon Simon, who had been dragged into the mirror world. He took the others, along with the extracted beyonder characteristics and the corpses whose beyonder characteristics had not yet been extracted, and left the area. As he left, he set the place on fire, burning the corpses of the marionettes, along with everything else in this underground gathering, in a blaze of crimson flames. Create a diversion, quickly. They couldn't let the official extraordinary, or the person who took Simon, find them. Simon, who had been transferred through the mirror world to a relatively safe area behind the mirror, was currently in a daze, looking at the gently smiling lady in front of him with little ability to resist. He had just recovered from the terror of being grabbed by the ankle and directly dragged into the mirror world. Upon seeing such a charming lady, his Adam's apple couldn't help but bob, and he swallowed hard, then stammered. Miss, is there anything I can do to help you? A witch's charm ability at the demigod level, this was not something a lucky one who was only sequence 7 could resist. Triss's lips parted slightly. She looked at this lucky one she had chosen, appearing thoughtful. You guys seem to know quite a bit about those things. Judging by their appearance, these people must have dealt with the marionettist's marionettes for quite some time. They even had beyonder weapons that could directly sever spirit body threads, which was uncommon. After all, the marionettist pathway is the most difficult sequence pathway to deal with below the demigod level, among all pathways and sequences. Not to mention, a marionettist who could control so many marionettes in a gathering was clearly not just a sequence 5 marionettist. Sequence 4, sequence 3, or perhaps, sequence 2 of the seer pathway. Triss lowered her eyes, secretly contemplating information about potential high-level seer pathway individuals at this time. But she had nothing. At this point in time, such a person shouldn't exist in Backland. Of course, in her previous life, Triss herself had always been kept by the witch sect near Edgar Augustus and didn't have the opportunity to interact much with other forces in Backland. Perhaps something like this did happen at this juncture, but she simply didn't know about it. Why yes, under the witch's charm, Simon spoke very frankly and rapidly, like pouring beans, to the lady in front of him who seemed to have captured his heart in every way. Those are marionettes. Miss, do you know what a marionette is? He intended to explain the concept of a marionette, seemingly wanting to show off his knowledge, but Triss, who had seen quite a few marionettes, just nodded, not intending to waste time on this. I have some understanding. Do you know whose marionettes they are? Seeing this, lucky one Simon could only shake his head regretfully. No, we've never found their marionettist. Never found their marionettist. Triss's eyes flickered, and then she casually said, before encountering these marionettes, I also encountered quite a few marionettes like them in Backland. Miss, stay away from them. When Simon heard that Triss had encountered those marionettes, he said very urgently, don't get close to those marionettes. That way, you'll be targeted too. Targeted by the marionettist. Triss's lips curved slightly, but her expression seemed quite bewildered. But the number of marionettes here seems very, very large. Are they controlled by the same marionettist? Won't the official extraordinary intervene if this happens? Is there some hidden truth here that I don't know about? Simon quickly explained, yes, they are all controlled by the same marionettist. We tried tracing the direction of the spirit body threads. The spirit body threads from different locations in Backland all drift in one direction. But that damned marionettist used some trick we don't know about. Every time we tracked, we ended up with nothing. There are more and more marionettes in Backland, and even among the official extraordinary, there are beyonders who have been turned into marionettes. Ever since someone whose relative was turned into a marionette reported it to the official extraordinary, that person was also turned into a marionette. Some people who contacted the official extraordinary were eventually arrested and locked up in the churches underground. After we learned there were marionettes among the official extraordinary, we stopped trusting the officials and organized ourselves, wanting to resist. Those marionettes, they are becoming less and less afraid of crowds. They appear almost in groups. No one can find where that marionettist is, just like no one knows why more and more people are being turned into marionettes, but others never notice. You guys can sense that these people are marionettes. Triss, however, caught a key point. She looked searchingly at the young man in front of her who seemed very ordinary, so ordinary that he wouldn't make a ripple if thrown into a crowd. How do you sense these marionettes? She asked. A marionettist's marionette is a very advanced puppet. Such marionettes are difficult to detect problems with in front of people who don't understand marionettists. Even if someone understands marionettists quite well, as long as the marionettist controls them skillfully, the marionettes they control can give the impression of being real people, making it very difficult to find any issues. How did this guy, who isn't even Sequence 5, discover the marionettist's marionettes? Before Triss saw the spirits of the dead marionettes appear in the mirror, she had never thought of them as marionettes either. Simon scratched his head with his relatively intact hand, looking quite bewildered. It's just a feeling, a very strong feeling, like they aren't living beings, they have no self-awareness, they feel like walking corpses. Captain told me that's a marionette, a humanoid puppet controlled by a marionettist. Triss fell silent. This was the same feeling she had when seeing those marionettes. But before realizing that these feelings originated from their non-human nature, from the fact that they were marionettes, Triss only found it strange and couldn't connect it to a marionettist's marionettes. She continued to ask, you, and all of you, have gathered together, wanting to fight against them? Yes, Simon said with great certainty. I, Captain, Chain, many people, all want to turn those marionettes back into corpses, not puppets controlled by others. Why? Because we all have relatives who have become like this. As he spoke, Simon gritted his teeth, his eyes revealing clear hatred. My grandmother, she was a loyal believer of the Black Knight goddess, but a few years ago she fell seriously ill. We sent her to Tingen City, hoping to cure her, but the doctors in Tingen City told us that her life was nearing its end and there was no need for treatment. We were very sad and brought her back to Backland. We had already begun to accept this outcome. But one day, she suddenly changed. She became talkative and healthy, as if she had returned to how she was before she got sick. Isn't that a good thing? Triss countered, but she already had the answer. No, it's not good at all. Simon gritted his teeth, continuously recounting the story of what happened to him under Triss's deliberate instigation. My grandmother is already dead. What's moving is her corpse. Although she looked very healthy, had a good personality, and was exactly like my grandmother, she wasn't her anymore. The scoundrel controlling her was desecrating her body, wantonly toying with others' emotions and hearts. I could feel it. She became cold, stiff, and emotionless. Even if her face wore a kind smile, just like before, her inner self was a cold, emotionless monster with no emotional fluctuations. Then, I pointed this out, but everyone thought I was crazy. After that, Grandma disappeared. The more Simon spoke, the more turbulent the emotions in his eyes became. We pulled many strings, we prayed to the goddess, we searched for a very long time, and finally, we found Grandma. They killed many people. My grandmother, she was a kind person, she wouldn't even harm small animals on the roadside that could be used as food, but she was smiling, she was killing people, she was smiling. The elderly person with faltering steps, holding a naive child's hand, holding playing cards, smiling, card after card, cutting off the heads of those people. Blood splattered on the elderly person, but the elderly person, towards Simon who was staring blankly, revealed a kind smile, just as always. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 306, 305 Witch. Grandma's smile sent shivers down one's spine, spreading outwards. That kind of smile was absolutely not an expression a human could make. That's not a person anymore, that's fundamentally not a person. Simon forced a smile at Triss. Sorry, madam, I said something unpleasant. It's all right. Triss smiled and waved her hand, asking innocently, so, for those who joined you, their relatives, friends, and partners, all became marionettes of that marionettist. Simon was immersed in fear and resentment, his body trembling slightly, but he quickly calmed down under the influence of the witch Triss. Yes, Simon nodded heavily, looking at the beautiful Triss in front of him with worry. We still don't know the conditions for that marionettist selecting marionettes, nor do we know how many such things exist throughout Backland. We've also tried to investigate and monitor what those marionettes do, hoping to find traces of the marionettist's existence or figure out their purpose, but after a long period of observation and surveillance, we still haven't figured anything out. Those people, those marionettes, some have acquired new identities, detached from their old social networks, and obtained new lives somewhere in Backland, but some still follow their original identity paths. People who don't know they are monsters can't tell the difference at all. As if recalling something, Simon's already poor expression worsened. People like us are only a minority. We can sense that our relatives, friends, and partners are dead, and that the one moving in front of us with a familiar appearance is a monster wearing human skin. But there are many more people whose parents, partners, and children have been silently replaced, yet they remain completely unaware, living in the same room with those marionettes. Marionettes hidden within human society, and such a large number of them, yet the Loen royal family and the three major churches have shown no reaction. Can they not distinguish between these things and humans? Triss didn't think so. Unless these marionettes were made perfectly, undetectable even by the churches, saints and terrifying sealed artifacts, it would be impossible for the three major churches and the Loen royal family, ancient existences traceable to the Fourth Epoch or even the Third Epoch, not to be able to distinguish them, let alone have their high-ranking members turn into marionettes. This was even more unbelievable than the entire population of Backland becoming marionettes. But even within such churches, there were high-ranking beyonders who had become marionettes. Did the churches really not know? Or did they allow it? After all, even these beyonders, who weren't even demigods, could identify those people as marionettes for unknown reasons. The churches and the Loen royal family couldn't possibly be inferior to these spontaneously growing beyonders. Thinking of this, Triss smiled faintly. Take me to see your other companions. I think our goals are the same. This situation, when thought about carefully, felt very interesting. If even Backland, the capital of Ruin, had become so riddled with holes, then what was the state of other parts of the Ruin Kingdom, or even the entire North Continent? When you find one cockroach in the sun, it means the number of cockroaches in the dark is already too many to fit. This is definitely not something a saint of the seer pathway could accomplish. It would require at least an angel, and specifically a high-level angel of the seer pathway with connections to the churches and the Loen royal family. Someone like that, why had she never seen them in her previous life before waking up here? Was this a new variable created because of her arrival? Triss was curious. A mysterious force was silently driving this former despair which to continue exploring, to uncover the truth hidden behind the scenes that was different from her previous life. And perhaps, this was the real reason why everything started over after her death. Simon's expression became slightly blank and conflicted when he heard this extremely charming lady say their goals were the same. The lucky man's expression gradually turned painful. He seemed to want to break free from Triss's charm manipulation, but as a lucky person with sufficient luck, he still failed. A sequence 7 lucky person, no matter how lucky, would find it difficult to resist the charm from a despair which without external interference. I'll take you to find them. Simon heard his own voice say. Okay, Triss replied with a light smile. Simon quickly walked out of a mirror in a certain location in Backland that Triss had marked beforehand, in a daze with Triss. After confirming there were no pursuers and no official beyonders had discovered them, Triss was led by Simon. They weaved through the streets and alleys of the East District, making countless turns, before arriving at a low-rise residential area situated beside a dirty small river. The East District was an area in Backland with relatively low rent and a diverse mix of tenants. Thanks to the laws and corresponding aid promoted by the Ruin Kingdom and several major churches over the past century, people in Backland might not live very well, but they could find food and survive. Those who were unemployed, barely scraping by on the poverty line, and struggling would be taken over by the churches, who would arrange work and distribute corresponding wages and food, sending them to places lacking labor to accept jobs, helping them return to society faster and better, and get through the most difficult period. Most people in the East District might not live glamorous lives, but with the intervention of the churches and the Ruin government departments, there were almost no homeless people or beggars on the streets, and instances of people starving or freezing to death were rare. In this era, living a glamorous life might require money, connections, resources, and a series of other things, making it very difficult. But if one just wanted to live, as long as they were willing to work diligently, they could always survive. This is also the reason for the existence of the East District. Although the facilities here were simpler and more dilapidated, the prices and many basic costs were relatively cheap, providing a place to stay and a place to earn a living for many outsiders who came to Backland to make a living. Simon found a low-rise residential area in the East District with cheap rent but a relatively decent environment. After Triss and Simon entered the residential area, they avoided the people coming and going and quickly found a room in the southwest corner that looked exceptionally dilapidated. Simon didn't knock, he skillfully opened the door and walked in. "Auntie Daisy," he had just called out, craning his neck to look around, but quickly froze on the spot. In this room, which was only a little over 10 square meters, pots, pans, and many clothes and items were piled up haphazardly. A kettle was whistling in the corner. The water had been boiling for a long time, but no one had taken it off. A bowl of clear water and a few slices of bread were on the table. The owner of the place seemed to have left in a hurry, not even packing their clothes and food before rushing away. Simon looked around inside and outside the door and didn't see Auntie Daisy here. She was really gone. How could this be? Anti-divination and anti-prediction measures were taken, very skillfully done. Even the things left behind can no longer be used as mediums for divination or prediction. Triss pushed open the door and walked in from outside. The witch scanned the items in the room, shook her head with a sigh of regret, and lamented. "Ah, they are indeed a cautious and careful group of people. After I abducted you in front of them and they knew you were untrustworthy and likely in trouble, those people, to avoid being divined and leaking information, simply had everyone in the strongholds you knew leave, and they took corresponding measures. Enemies with divination methods won't be able to follow the trail and catch those people." Although Triss's tone was full of regret, her gaze bypassed the confused and somewhat panicked Simon and fell on a spot outside the wooden window frame, which was quite common in the East District slum. Simon's lips were pale, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say. "You say, will those people try to monitor these places to determine if there are pursuers, or if there are official beyonders, or perhaps those marionettes from Backland, investigating them?" Triss looked at the now useless Simon and asked with a smile. Since it was confirmed that those people intended to abandon these locations, the methods Simon knew to contact them should also be useless. After all, no one knew how many of their secrets a captured companion would reveal. To avoid complete annihilation, cutting ties decisively was the most rational choice. Triss appreciated this point, and also their very decisive character. "Madam, you mean..." Simon's face was pale, his lips trembled, and Triss's mouth curved slightly. "They're here." With a gunshot not far away, a bullet that seemed capable of annihilating even spiritual bodies passed through the glass and struck Triss, who had turned her head to look out the window at some point. The bullet accurately entered her glabella. Simon cried out, but before he could say anything more, Triss's body shattered with a crack, turning into a mirror that had been shot through. This was the witch's mirror substitute. This substitute would automatically shatter when subjected to a fatal blow, helping the main body escape certain death. The shattering mirror broke and scattered in all directions. Here, Simon's luck played a significant role. The shattering mirror fragments grazed the lucky man's body, and aside from leaving a few scratches, the lucky man, who was stunned, did not suffer any other damage. And Triss was no longer here. She was relatively far from here, but could clearly be seen on a high-rise building in the dilapidated residential building next to the dirty small river. This unexpected bullet only hit the mirror, causing Cyrus, who fired the shot, to slightly narrow his eyes. When Cyrus saw Simon, he breathed a sigh of relief, but when he saw the woman who had captured Simon, the breath he hadn't had time to let out was sucked back in, caught in his throat. He was controlled. Seeing that his attack had missed and the strange woman had disappeared, Cyrus decisively threw away his gun. He got up and quickly left the sniping point, quickly concealing himself during this time, and took out a charm from his jacket pocket, igniting it rapidly by rubbing it with his spirituality. Under the flame of spirituality friction, the charm flickered with a hazy, fragmented feeling, like stars twinkling in the night. These fragmented starlight points quickly covered Cyrus's entire body. After doing this, he had already changed clothes, put on a hat, and was about to go downstairs directly. "Are you doing anti-divination?" Triss's figure was reflected in the stairwell, visible on the glass window of the attacked location not far away. The witch, with a slender, long, extremely well-proportioned, and extraordinarily beautiful hand, reached across the mirror, while her bright and moving, soul-stirring face still in the mirror, and her eyes seemingly filled with a smile, watched the man in front of her intently. She smiled, a kind of temptation stemming from her own charm, causing Cyrus's gaze to involuntarily fall upon her. Cyrus quickly took out the revolver from the holster behind his waist and swiftly aimed it at Triss Chick, who had already walked out of the mirror in front of him. "Why are you so hostile towards me?" Triss's mouth curved slightly, her eyes shifting. "We are allies, not enemies." This time, her answer was 2 shots without hesitation. Triss's figure shattered like a mirror once again, the magic mirror substitute was activated. Simultaneously, a streak of black flame ignited on Cyrus's body. This was the witch's black flame. Witches possessed the extraordinary abilities of ice and fire, and after advancing to pain, they gained the ability of mysticism pathogens. Unbeknownst to him, Triss had already spread quite a bit of the witch's mysticism viruses and countless threads of silk capable of causing pleasure into the air. As an experienced despair witch, Triss was quite skilled at weaving traps and subtly affecting the enemy's state. Facing a Beander who was clearly stronger than himself, after 2 shots, harvesting, nothing but consuming the opponent's mirror substitute, Cyrus's figure instantly transformed into a flaming spear. At this moment, he couldn't care whether he was in the East District, whether he would attract attention, or the issue of rapid spirituality consumption. This flaming spear was thrown into the distance just before the witch's silk was about to completely entangle him. He wanted to evade the witch's mysticism viruses and the restraint of the silk and leave the East District. Chapter 307, 306 When there's no danger, I am the biggest. The flame spear streaked across the sky above the East District, but soon, the flame spear mixed with the witch's black flames extinguished before it could be locked onto and intercepted by Backland's official forces. The person inside was nowhere to be found, their whereabouts unknown, leaving no trace. They were still counter-divined and counter-predicted. A hunter, who wasn't particularly skilled in skirmishes, reacted so quickly when facing a despair witch. It seems they are very familiar with the witch's combat methods. As the hunter pathway is adjacent to the witch pathway, could this person be connected to the witch sect? Ah, what a pity. Triss, standing on the shattered mirror, felt a hint of regret as she watched the ball of flame disappear in midair. She returned to where Simon was. The lucky Simon looked at Triss walking in and asked somewhat blankly. "Lady, was that person who just gathered you, Captain?" "Yes." Triss covered her mouth and smiled lazily. "It's a pity he got away. Otherwise, I would have wanted him to experience joy first, and then experience despair that permeates the bone." A despair witch is someone who makes herself feel despair and also makes others feel despair. Triss had already completed her role-playing as a despair witch long ago. Before she died, she had already met most of the role-playing requirements for a despair witch. Before she returned to this point in time, before entering George III's mausoleum, using the "yesterday's recurrence" charm given by Gehrman Sparrow, she allowed a portion of the primordial's power to descend, disrupting the Black Emperor's god ascension ritual and causing George III's ritual to fail. A Beander who was about to become a true god, facing the witch who caused this situation before his death, the despair that arose sincerely from within was enough for Triss to completely digest the despair potion before her death. "I just don't know what would happen if I directly consumed the despair potion in this state." She herself was curious about her current state. Even though she didn't have the Beander characteristic of a despair witch in her body, she could still use the abilities of a despair witch. Without the Beander characteristic as a material basis, why could such a change occur? When she only possessed the Beander characteristic of a Sequence 7 witch, would directly consuming the despair witch potion cause her to go mad due to the rapid sequence jump, or would she regain her divinity because she was once a despair witch? Triss was curious. She felt she could try it before the great smog of Backland arrived. "Even without me, the cooperation between the witch sect and Augustus will continue. I just don't know who the witch staying by Edsac's side will be this time." Thinking of these things, the smile on Triss's face widened even more. Triss thought of something very interesting. The gentle, involuntary charm that attracted others silently amplified to its maximum, making her even more captivating, causing everyone around her, regardless of gender, to approach her. Simon, who had no idea what was going on, stared intently at the witch in front of him, saliva almost dripping from the corner of his mouth. Triss glanced at this lucky guy and casually asked, "Is there any other way to contact your captain? I want to talk to your captain." Simon, who felt a strange sense of deterrence under Triss's gaze, quickly wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. After thinking for a moment, he immediately came up with a solution to the current predicament. "The places I know, my companions should have already moved. But there are some places that are our secret intelligence exchange points. Even if those places are abandoned, as long as we leave the corresponding information there, it's possible for Captain and the others to know." Very good. Triss nodded, then her eyes shifted, and she said to Simon, "Then go and leave the information. Just say, an Avenger wants to cooperate with them, and the reward." She smiled slightly. "How about the Iron-Blooded Knight's potion formula? If you need it, Backland, East District." In the crisscrossing, somewhat gloomy but not exactly dirty alleys, Tang, wearing a loose off-white t-shirt and matching long pants, glanced at the flame spear that had disappeared in midair. "It's quite interesting. An organization that wants to resist me, hunting my marionettes in Backland, harboring such strong hatred towards me. Although the hatred hasn't truly locked onto me, if this continues, I feel like I'll become the biggest villain soon. And a larger one at that, more destructive than the hidden sage, true creator, and bound god, more concealed, harder to kill, more agile, and occasionally causing some trouble, making it onto the church's wanted list, the biggest evil god. This is much more impressive than the true creator and the others." Host, your expression QAQ. "No, host, why don't you look at your expression? That's getting more and more joyful as you talk. Host, you're turning into a pleasure offender. Where did my gentle, kind, and righteous host from before go? Tang pressed his fingers against the sides of his mouth, preventing the flesh there from splitting to his ears, turning into a large gap, making him look like a slit-mouthed woman, ugly and unpleasant. I can only say that at the cryptic servant stage, with the faceless ability, you can grow as many eyes as you want on your face, and have as many ears as you want. Even without activating the mythical creature form, just using the faceless ability, you can achieve operations comparable to changing species. Indeed, the Lord of the Mysteries is the Lord of the Mysteries. Among the three mystic pathways, the Fool pathway is the most fitting and closest to the image of mystic. I'm just feeling interested, Tong Zi. Understand the meaning of troublemaker. After all, having lived for so long, if I don't find something to do, I'll die of boredom. Although this is based on the my happiness is built on others' suffering behavior of a troublemaker. But if I say that, Tang feels like he's becoming more and more like a behind-the-scenes big boss. And the kind that is even more lawless than Adam and Amon. Adam is at least for all of humanity. Amon is indeed just a bit of a troublemaker, but he only messes with beyonders of his own pathway. Unlike him, who fires indiscriminately across the entire map and just hangs people up as marionettes if things don't go his way. What should I do? What should I do? In the end, after Klein becomes the Lord of the Mysteries, will he turn around and kill me first? System. Host, you are so self-aware. After all, Huang Dao thought so. Tang shrugged. It's not like Dao Dao hasn't wanted to kill me for a day or two. Alas, I don't understand, why should transmigrators make things difficult for transmigrators? We are all remnants of the old days, we should unite. How can one's Dao heart collapse like this, constantly wanting to kill me, an old transmigrator senior who painstakingly raised him? At least he called me senior for so many years before. As expected, when people become strong, they like to be ungrateful, repay kindness with enmity, stab others in the back, and don't understand respecting the elderly and loving the young at all. As he spoke, Tang seemed to recall something sad, feigning sorrow and pain, wiping away non-existent cyber tears from the corner of his eyes. System. Host, you were going to directly slit Dao Dao's, oh no, Rosal the Great's throat before. Is it ungrateful for him to resist? Should he just wash himself clean and wait for you to hang him up as a marionette? Why not? Everyone else is like this. Look at Kotar, look at Zarathus, look at Nicola. Aren't they all quite willing? Tang argued righteously with his system. Grim Wolf Kothar, still working on the South Continent. Do you even hear what you're saying? Zarathus, seriously, maybe the honored lord should be resurrected. Nicola adjusted his black silk top hat. As long as you like it. Say whatever you want, who can out-talk you? The system, knowing the truth. This person is really shameless. Even it, a system, can't stand it anymore. Ignoring his system's muttering, Tang casually summoned a historical void image of a monocle from the historical mist and skillfully put the monocle on his right eye socket. He adjusted his monocle, didn't continue joking with his system, and said, "Triss Chick has the lingering power of a blessing on her. This should be the power of the blessing from the sequence 2 sinner of the Ring of Destiny pathway. But from my observation, this blessing is not complete. Aside from giving Triss Chick the power she once had as a despair witch, it hasn't displayed any angel-level abilities. Perhaps this is also because the high-dimensional overseer also bestowed a blessing power. The two conflicted and mixed together. That should be the case, host." The system had been analyzing the special sample of Triss Chick for a while. Besides worrying about using Nicola's time worm to create new subsystems during this time, it spent most of its time processing the problem of Triss Chick with a large number of algorithms. Humans are naturally social animals. In this society, except for Beyonders who can survive without eating or drinking, even demigods find it difficult to completely live outside human society. Therefore, the system, through a large number of observations from its host's marionettes, is inversely analyzing the strange phenomenon on Triss Chick from various aspects. After all, the appearance of such an example is truly rare, so rare that its main system even came over to observe the situation of this special sample for a while. Because of this, the system felt its system life was complete. After all, before, it would cry and crawl through the network cable to its main system to complain. Now, it finally held its head high, and it was the turn of its dear main system to actively come over through the network cable to see the situation here. Proud JPG. Standing alone JPG. Main system. Tang. Seriously, sometimes you should also self-examine. Knowledge wilderness, aren't you going to fix all these bugs you created? However, this kind of guy coming from the original work involves the high-dimensional overseer who is probably mad somewhere, plus the Ring of Destiny, an old one with the symbol of salvation. Tang pinched his monocle. He said slowly, "To be honest, I have a premonition that the things those two old fellows are secretly plotting might have some unusual meaning for me. And this may not be a bad thing. It's just a pity that the future involving the high-dimensional overseer and the Ring of Destiny's plot is vague and unreal." Even though Tang is about to finish digesting all the Beyonder characteristics of a cryptic servant and has used Klein to ascend Source Castle, temporarily controlling Source Castle, which is equivalent to an Angel King, he still cannot see it while he is still only at the Angel King stage and has not yet become the Fool, or the Supreme One. Because that part of the future involves multiple great existences and even more terrifying power. And, things one level higher than the Sequence 0 Supreme One. The sequence pathway that has the power of the high-dimensional overseer, is compatible with the Ring of Destiny pathway, and is mixed with the essence of a book transmigrator, the things it represents and the symbolic authority it possesses. Even if it is fate, that terrifying, predetermined fate is not something he can bear now. Thinking of this, Tang actually felt a bit of anticipation. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up, then split open. Subsequently, many figures walked out from the surroundings. Their faces were wriggling, their clothes also changed from various colors and styles to uniform loose off-white t-shirts and matching long pants, their mouths were split open, their faces full of smiles, and after the twisting flesh calmed down, their appearances were exactly the same. Tang. I really don't know what it will turn into then. At that time, it should be even more interesting. After confirming that he had escaped the pursuit of that high-level witch, Cyrus moved his left hand. He endured the piercing pain from being burned by the witch's black flames expressionlessly and walked into a safe house. Many people from the East District had moved here after Simon was captured. As Cyrus walked in, his movement suddenly stopped. The young man sitting on a chair in the safe house slowly turned his head. He had a smile on his face, wearing a loose off-white t-shirt and matching long pants, his expression calm, his hands placed in front of him. All the East District resistors in this safe house stood up expressionlessly. Their bodies emitted an inorganic, cold, eerie, lifeless texture. Exactly the same as those marionettes. Cyrus's pupils widened. He watched as all his companions in the entire room had become marionettes, his eyes splitting with rage. "Ah, nice to meet you." "No, I can't say that either." Tang leaned back in the chair, his tone relaxed and carefree. "After all, having killed so many of my marionettes, it's impossible for me not to know anything, right?" He smiled. "So, I'm here. What's wrong? It seems you don't welcome me much. Cyrus's speed at drawing his gun was very fast. With a few gunshots, it was the other marionettes standing on either side of Tang who fell. Their heads exploded, red and white flying out, exactly the same as the marionettes they had killed before, exactly the same. Chapter 308, 307 Whereabouts. Blazing white flames instantly ignited the entire house, but soon these flames, which had lit up the beams, the corpses, and the clothes, vanished with a snap of a finger. A flaming spear paused in front of Tang. This time, the reap still caused him no harm. But for a reaper who hasn't stepped through the door of a demigod, killing my two marionettes should still greatly digest the reaper potion. Tang maintained his original posture, casually propping his chin with one hand. The surrounding marionettes stood up one after another as he manipulated his fingers. The two marionettes on the ground, whose heads had exploded and should have been dead beyond recovery, also slowly rose. The outflow from their blossoming heads had stopped, but the blood and brain matter smeared across their faces did not disappear with the power of miracle. This made them look monstrous and terrifying, perfectly fitting the image in any horror movie that would make children stop crying just by seeing it. Not to mention the bright, glaring smiles on the marionettes' faces. What once existed, for a cryptic servant, still exists now. A cryptic servant can summon the spiritual threads of once living inanimate objects. This is the highest level application of a marionettist spiritual threads at the sequence 1 level. Tang did not manipulate the marionettes to pursue, but instead let the reaper escape from his grasp. A coffee cup appeared at his hand. Holding a spoon, he gently stirred the coffee in the cup. With another snap of his fingers, the overly simple house, which even in daylight did not receive enough sunlight, instantly looked brand new. The miracle worker fulfilled his wish, making the place completely different from its previous appearance. After doing all this, threads of brilliant light appeared in the depths of his dark, unmoving pupils, as if he saw a certain scene. All the marionettes in the room revealed identical smiles. Standing on the new tiled floor, Tang stood up, then walked out of the house and casually gazed at the sun in the sky. The sun is quite nice today. Based on Triss Chick's uniqueness, she is clearly well aware of the existence of Alisuhad's quill and harbors strong hostility and vigilance towards the predetermined coincidences in her life. For this test subject, Alisuhad's quill's arrangements will serve as an aid to fate, providing some assistance to Tang Eggers. Due to the arrival of Tang Eggers's marionette, the situation in Backland has changed once again. Triss Chick, who possesses the power bestowed by a great existence, predictably sensed the presence of Tang Eggers's marionette. This is quite reasonable, and this also led Triss Chick to inevitably begin to suspect whether there were changes in Backland at this point in time that did not conform to her memories. To this end, Triss Chick prepared to make close contact with the rebel Beander who, for some unknown reason, could also perceive the existence of the marionette. Triss Chick had already learned from her memories before her rebirth, that her enemy was George III, the current king of Ruin Kingdom. This is clearly not an existence that a sequence 4 despair which can deal with. She clearly cannot replicate the rebirth plan that led to George III's death and the failure of his schemes in a short period. Without multiple coincidences and without Klein Moretti's help, assassinating George III would be tantamount to courting death. Following this logical deduction, Triss Chick will, before the arrival of the Backland Great Smog, do her utmost to rapidly advance her sequence, and fighting alone will definitely not be a good choice. Tang Eggers, who condoned the existence of the rebel army, has already arranged a direct path to the despair which for Triss Chick. Alisuhad's quill believes that Edsac Augustus will play a significant role in this matter. The next part of the story will unfold from Edsac Augustus's perspective, which is a very reasonable development. Based on the law of Beander characteristics convergence, the sequence 5 Reaper, Cyrus Bohr of the rebel army, who escaped from Tang Eggers's clone, coincidentally encountered the Red Angel evil spirit who was attempting to break through the Tudor seal. After all, the Red Angel evil spirit was once an angel king of the Red Priest pathway. This is also a very reasonable and expected development. Sauron Einhorn Medici has been corrupted by fate. The Red Angel evil spirit desires at least one Conqueror Beander characteristic. Tang Eggers has agreed to this evil spirit's request. To this end, Tang Eggers has already prepared the corresponding container. The story thus continues to be written. Tang Eggers believes that Alisuhad's quill's coincidental arrangements should be as concealed as possible. Regarding this request, crossed out here, Alisuhad's quill believes Tang Eggers's suggestion is quite reasonable. Alisuhad's quill will make the subsequent story arrangements more in line with the trend of the times. Tang Eggers has predicted that Triss Chick, of the Witch Pathway, will reach a certain cooperation agreement with the Red Angel evil spirit before the Backland Great Smog arrives. This is the instinctive effect produced by the law of Beander characteristics convergence, in line with the fate set by Tang Eggers. Tingen City, with the perfect conclusion of the professional ritual magic level test, various forces have obtained their desired results. Tang Eggers will fully digest all of the cryptic servant potion and, with the help of a special existence, enter the stormy sea, directly facing the arrangements left by Death Salinger. The story of Tingen City, centered on Klein Moretti, is about to end. When Klein Moretti faces the disaster caused by the true creator, where everyone he cares about and everyone who cares about him completely dies, some dying due to the indoctrination of the hidden sage, and some committing suicide under the influence of the original witch, what will this fated one do? For some special reasons, Alisuhad's quill believes that Klein Moretti's probability of going mad is not low. When he later realizes that Tang Eggers was the mastermind behind all of this, engaging in overly drastic actions will be an unavoidable outcome. Evidently, Klein Moretti's behavior, which does not quite conform to the future Alisuhad's quill once wrote, requires Alisuhad's quill to recreate, crossed out from here. Upon confirmation, Tang Eggers will take action to reverse this expected development, this outcome that aligns with Alisuhad's quill's intentions. The story of Backland is about to begin. All actors are in place. Everyone is waiting for Tingen City's yet another destruction. The sun will always set, the moon will always rise. The complete destruction of Tingen City, and the truth being revealed, is a predetermined fate and an inevitable destiny. The rustling sound of writing ceased here. Holding an ordinary quill, Ins Zangwil, with one eye blind, looked at the sun outside the window, a benevolent smile on his lips. The story of Tingen City is about to end. All of this is both fate and destiny. Euclidean space, Black Vortex Town. Anderson carefully sneaked into the outer passage of the underground area. With the Beander ability of an arsonist, Anderson, without a torch, had a quietly burning fireball floating beside him, providing light and heat, illuminating this clearly artificially excavated underground passage area. At this moment, Anderson looked somewhat disheveled. Due to falling from a great height in the pouring rain, his face and body were covered in small wounds. Although these wounds had healed, and the rainwater on his body had evaporated with the heat of the flames, the mud and damage left behind could not disappear with the burning flames. Not only that, Anderson's originally not so long golden hair had now grown to be as tall as he was. This was after he had actively burned it once. Otherwise, this wildly growing hair, completely inconsistent with the speed of hair growth, would have long since dragged out a long blanket behind him. Ah, could this be the Rapunzel that Rosal the Great once wrote about? It should be called Prince Charming with long hair. He was just an ordinary handsome guy. Anderson, somewhat finding joy in his suffering, once again used fire to burn the constantly twisting and coiling tips of his hair, which were about to turn into a whirlpool, intending to make his hair behave. As a reaper who had run rampant in the mist sea for so many years, Anderson could only helplessly shake his head at this. Anderson let out a soft breath, trying his best to lower his breathing rate and heartbeat, so as not to overconsume his already limited physical strength due to his emotional tension. This place is really annoying. As he approached the core area of this examination site, Anderson had to be extra cautious. Recalling the mission the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom had given him before he came to Tingen City to participate in this unknown exam, Anderson couldn't help but mutter a curse about the trouble. Those guys were a bit too much. No, they were extremely too much. First, they inexplicably called him back and, under the guise of checking learning progress, threw him into a place full of criminals. Then, without explanation, they shoved him, who had just managed to crawl out of that hellhole and hadn't even caught his breath, onto a steam train and transported him all the way to Ruin to participate in this damn exam. Anderson just felt incredibly unlucky. Why did all these unlucky things happen to him? And after arriving in this strange town, unlucky things truly came one after another. There were many intertwined passages beneath Black Vortex Town. Entering here without guidance, it was honestly quite impossible not to get lost. However, after entering the underground passages, Anderson quickly discovered that his hair, influenced by the whirlpool, could accurately point to the area where the largest whirlpool was located. Of course, These hairs could be both a guide and a killer that could directly strangle him on the spot. Holding the task item camera, which he hadn't let go of even in a typhoon, Anderson followed the guidance of his hair, continuing along the intricate underground passages, illuminating his way with a blazing white fireball as he walked forward. As he walked, Anderson also dealt with the problem of his hair, which grew more exuberantly the closer he got to the core, seemingly ready to wrap around his neck 3 times at any moment. One day ago, Anderson, Klein, and Furs were forced by the rainy woman monster to leave their temporary dwelling. As they stepped outside, the 3 of them were almost simultaneously blown into the air by a strong wind, rushing towards the endless dome above their heads. The speed was incredibly fast, and the wind was powerful. As they were swept up by the wind, they also had to pay more attention to other things that were also being swept up, such as not so firmly fixed eaves and uprooted trees. Therefore, they had no chance to escape the typhoon's pull and land safely. And the sound emanating from something unknown within the typhoon, when calling their names, clearly contained powerful mental pollution effects. The more the few of them listened to the names read out in the typhoon, the more their mental resilience decreased. A decrease in mental resilience would cause a person to become dazed and increase the risk of losing control and going mad. And once a candidate's mental resilience dropped below 20, they would be directly cleared from the examination room and fail the exam. In this situation, even if Anderson transformed himself into a flaming spear, he would likely be sucked back in by the typhoon's powerful suction. Just as they thought they were about to be dashed to death, Klein gave them a few papers with strange symbols drawn on them. A ritual pointing to the Lord of Storms. Furs had carefully studied the books, journals, and papers on ritual magic published by Miskatonic, and knew that for a ritualist who was not good at close-quarters combat, emergency ritual magic, which meant reduced effectiveness, omitted candles and most incantations, similar to one-time use talismans, was a common item to carry. This was clearly an emergency ritual magic that Klein had made at some unknown time. It didn't require an altar or a spiritual wall. Although its effect would be greatly weakened, its advantage lay in convenience and speed. Reduce wind force, reduce damage, descend. Light it and pray directly to the Lord of Storms, it should work. Klein's voice was too soft. Even if he shouted loudly, others would have difficulty hearing him. However, the Beyonders participating in this exam had quite solid basic mysticism knowledge. After receiving the emergency ritual magic clearly depicting the holy radiance of storm, they immediately found a way to light the papers with symbols in the strong wind and rain. The next moment, the wind around the 3 of them suddenly calmed. They fell straight down, landing separately. Chapter 309, 308 Missions. After this, the few people separated. Due to the wind direction of the gale and the differences in the use of ritual magic, the unlucky people who were swept into the gale landed in different locations. As the one with the highest sequence pathway and some understanding and experience of such volatile weather, Anderson quickly controlled his landing direction and returned to the ground, avoiding unfortunate situations like broken bones. After once again concealing his figure and entering Black Vortex Town, Anderson followed his intuition as a schemer, connecting the various pieces of information he had obtained and looking towards the focal point of the typhoon's path, which was the center of the entire Black Vortex Town, Sphere Lake. Taking a deep breath, Anderson found an opportunity to dive into Sphere Lake, located in the center of the town. Within the water currents and surging whirlpools, he entered the underground area of Black Vortex Town. The impact is growing stronger. The closer he got to the core problem of this town, the faster his mental value dropped. This forced Anderson to focus and consider how to minimize wasted time, compressing it as much as possible to approach the overall core of Black Vortex Town. After all, if this continues, I'll be cleared from the examination due to excessively low mental value before reaching the core area. Seriously, why did he have to deliver this thing? With his palm pressed against the wall, Anderson closed his eyes to feel the hardness and thickness of the soil here. He then stepped back slightly, clenching his right hand into a fist. Compressed flames, accompanying this punch, violently exploded on the wall in front of him, concentrating at a single point. With just the right amount of impact and a low explosion sound, the unrefined earthen wall in front of him immediately burst open, revealing a dark underground passage behind it. A smile appeared on Anderson's face, and then he set fire to the hair behind him that was trying to strangle his neck again. This is much faster. After briefly calculating the rate of his mental value decline, the speed of his hair growth, and the consumption of his spirituality, Anderson adjusted the degree of flame compression within the most reasonable range. He then proceeded to blast open wall after wall in the same manner, moving quickly and rushing towards the core area of the entire town. This underground passage was like a labyrinth. While breaking through the walls of the passage and advancing, he also spared some mental energy to glance at the blasted-through area behind him. That dark expanse, even under the illumination of the flames, had no visible end. It seemed as if the darkness behind him followed closely as Anderson ran forward, trying to drag him into the shadows. Mental value 50, mental value 40, mental value 30. The continuous drop in mental value proved that his route was correct, but Anderson couldn't afford to be careless in the slightest. In fact, both his spiritual intuition and his innate sixth sense as a hunter were telling him not to get any closer. Phew. When Anderson's mental value was about to drop below 20, the last wall was finally broken through by the violent force of the flames. This was the end of the passage, where the greatest secret of the entire Black Vortex town, this, level 3 inches examination venue, was buried. Within the vast, empty cavern, a silent, small black sphere, as if attracting all things in the world, was now silently floating in the very center of the cave. Anderson's gaze was immediately drawn to that black. No, it wasn't black, but rather all light had been absorbed into it, which is why it appeared black, unable to reflect light. What a violent way to clear the stage! Another voice, unfamiliar to Anderson, echoed in the empty underground cavern. Only then did Anderson notice that there was another person standing beneath the black sphere, looking at him. In merely seeing the youth once, Anderson's head buzzed and exploded. This was not only on a mental level but also a physical one. He saw a person, wearing a monocle, with half of his body human and the other half a constantly twisting worm. Upon seeing this person, countless mad worms continuously crawled out of his eyes, mouth, and ears. The blood vessels beneath his skin writhed frantically, as if more worms were incubating within them, and his contaminated hair instantly turned into countless transparent and translucent worms, attempting to crawl out of Anderson's body and towards the youth. Unseen by Anderson, the spirit worms on his body involuntarily drifted towards the black sphere and towards the youth. Examinee 10048, having witnessed an indescribable entity, mental value has dropped below 20, breaking the mental defense line. Cleared from the examination, Anderson's body was like a mass of flesh dragged and stuck together by countless worms. Just at the first glance of witnessing it, his entire being exploded, shattered, and became nourishment for countless spirit worms. A Beyander of Sequence 5 died on the spot just by witnessing Tang's incomplete mythical creature form. Of course, based on the necessary protection provided by Nicola, this, death, refers to the death of the body within the examination venue. The person themselves was merely cleared out. Tang, who had done nothing but allow others to admire his worms, cast his gaze upon Anderson's exploded remains. What a fragile Sequence 5. There were no Beyander characteristics of Anderson's Sequence 5 in the exploded remains, but there were other things within the remains. Looking at the scattered red glowing objects gradually coalescing within the remains, Tang pinched his monocle and beckoned to the light. The red light seemed to be drawn by an invisible force, taken by Tang, and held in his hand. Those who come here without being disturbed by me, the boss guarding the pass, are either those with some special qualities, like a shepherd who brought some true creator flesh in, or a demigod who can use divinity to withstand my incomplete mythical creature form. The greatest danger in Black Vortex Town is the unstable black hole obtained from Superstar Dominator. Through grafting and dismantling, various concepts within this black hole are simultaneously grafted onto all things in Black Vortex Town. Even outsiders are affected by this grafting. The method to obtain a level 1 ritualist qualification in this dungeon requires completely solving the black hole problem. The method to obtain a level 2 ritualist qualification requires designing a ritual magic to suppress the black hole's influence on the town. For level 3, simply escaping the town is sufficient. Unfortunately, the unlucky Anderson Hood encountered Tang, who had come from the Starry Gate because of the true creator, and was instantly killed by his incomplete mythical creature form. How unlucky. Looking at the miniature red flag-like object within the red light, Tang crumpled it up, and then, as if performing magic, pressed it into his palm before releasing it. The miniature red flag-like object disappeared from his palm, sent to his main body. 001 is in the stomach of the god of knowledge and wisdom, Harabergen. If we simply use the extensibility of Euclidean space, it's temporarily impossible to penetrate the stomach of a sequence 0 without permission. Moreover, this would be a rather strong provocative act, digging into someone else's stomach. It seems the God of knowledge and wisdom has made a choice. Sending the entry and exit credentials to him means he has agreed to what he is about to do. But speaking of 001, Tang remembered when he talked to the Pope of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom about this matter. The God of Knowledge and Wisdom seemed to have made a prophecy about it. There are certain hidden dangers in the Red Priest's path to godhood, and there are many messy things in the uniqueness of this pathway. Coupled with the original witch secretly coveting nearby, this is also why the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom has always sealed and guarded 001, instead of using this sealed artifact for something. But according to that vague prophecy made by the God of Knowledge and Wisdom an unknown time ago, there should be another person around this time who is quite suitable for the Red Priest, or something similar. Never mind. When the Red Priest appears, that prophecy can just be taken as a joke. After all, divination is not omnipotent, and prophecies are not necessarily accurate. Maybe it's Medici. However, speaking of such a person, the other avatars of the main body in Intis, it seems, did indeed see someone similar to Klein's fated person. Is it related to this? Tang shook his head, still throwing the messy prophecies he had heard earlier to the back of his mind, and very happily prepared to see where his dear Klein had gone now. Anyway, if the sky falls, the tall ones will hold it up. Why should an avatar like him understand all these messy things? Landing in the gale, Furs, who had only slightly scraped against trees and wasn't too heavily injured, clutched her slightly dizzy head, looking around somewhat dazed, trying to discern her location. When she clearly saw that this seemed to be the mountainous area next to Black Vortex Town, with only a vague outline of Black Vortex Town visible, Furz's mind cleared up quite a bit. Was I directly thrown out with this shui? She quickly touched the special bracelet with 12 segments on her hand, but after confirming that the condition, escape Black Vortex Town, had not been met, she could only let out a helpless sigh. She knew this money wouldn't be so easy to get. How could she just be thrown out like this, perfectly landing outside? Thinking back on her experiences over the past few days, if it weren't for Anderson Hood, the Sequence 5 hunter, Furs felt she would have been finished on the first night, when she saw those pregnant women in the hospital. Now it's just me, Furs. There's only one more scene left, and then I can try to escape. After cheering herself up, Furs looked behind her, with Black Vortex Town at her back. This was a dense jungle, but similar to the situation in Black Vortex Town, the trees here all grew towards Black Vortex Town, as if there was an invisible object there, continuously gathering surrounding things towards it. Not only that, while forests usually have overgrown weeds, the weeds here had all grown into the shape of a whirlpool, dense and seemingly endless. The whirlpool's pollution had clearly made this place equally twisted and bizarre. Furz's scalp tingled, but she still followed the barely existing path between the weeds and trees, walking away from Black Vortex Town. She wanted to try to leave this place. Having successfully recorded 4 scenes, Furs now had only one left, which was the way out of Black Vortex Town. This was the final test question. Wiping the mud from her face, under the still pouring rain, Furs dragged her trembling, exhausted body, step by step, deeper into the forest. Furs. A strange sound came from somewhere again, but Furs completely ignored it, panting as she climbed the mountain. Her belongings were all soaked. The candles she had couldn't be lit without matches. Because of this, Furs could only pray that the rest of the journey was something she, a Sequence 9 apprentice, could handle. At some point, the rain falling from the sky had diminished significantly from its initial downpour. Here, all around were various twisted trees and equally tall weeds. Furs belatedly realized that her clothes had dried. She slowly raised her head, and her stomach rumbled appropriately. Speaking of which, how long had it been since she ate? Furs vaguely touched her stomach. Just as she was thinking about eating, something nearby caught her attention. It was a snail shell, about half a person's length in diameter. And a slippery, slimy thing was crawling out of the snail shell. It was something Furs had seen before, a person who had been affected by the whirlpool, and turned into a monster. A snail person, a gurgle sounded, but it wasn't from Furs herself. She slowly looked behind her, only to see that at some unknown point, 2 hungry people had also followed her. These 2 people were not mutated, nor were they monsters, they should just be normal NPCs, also trying to escape Black Vortex Town. However, Similar to Furz's condition, for them, long periods without food or sufficient rest had pushed their bodies to their limits. The two hungry people saw the giant snail, completely different from the surrounding flowers and trees, and couldn't help but swallow their saliva. It's a snail. Meat, it's meat. The snail seemed to realize something. Its head, which had emerged from its shell, suddenly retracted inward, but the two people rushed over at a speed that astonished Furz. One of them even followed the direction the snail curled into, crawling into the snail shell. Just one bite, let me have one bite, Jared. You go start a fire, hee, hurry, we'll have fresh snail meat soon. Furz felt a shiver of disgust and distanced herself from these two guys. Chapter 310, 309 Inches Priest. Are these people, acting like this, eating humans? Watching them frantically grab the snail shell of the snail human, one person pulled, seemingly trying to pull the snail human out of its shell, while the other had already begun breaking off the erratically growing branches from the surrounding trees, starting to build a fire in the most primitive way. Because of this, she couldn't help but distance herself from these individuals. Although her stomach was protesting, Furz didn't believe her moral compass would allow her to eat humans. These people's minds were clearly abnormal. Furz wasn't sure if these two still retained basic sanity, or if even that basic sanity had deteriorated due to the expanding concept of the whirlpool, and declining mental values, turning them into monsters with human exteriors but rotten interiors. The entire town is abnormal. Whatever is buried in the town has polluted the entire small town. This situation is very similar to the highly potent sealed artifacts owned by the church. Among the three major churches in the Ruined Kingdom, excluding the Artisan Church which has inexplicably always been in a weak position, the other two major churches have considerable influence in the Ruined Kingdom. Furz knew of several instances where entire villages and towns had to be cleared by the church due to the terrifying influence of sealed artifacts. These sealed artifacts were terrifying things that could easily destroy a town, a city, or even a country. Clearly, whatever was in this 3 inches level ritualist examination hall, whether it was the placentas of those pregnant women, or all the anomalies of those snail humans and whirlpool humans, must be products created by the leaked power of something similar to a sealed artifact. It's too terrifying. If this kind of thing were to leak into our real world. Just thinking about that scene gave Furz goosebumps. She didn't know what the designer of this examination hall was thinking, but whoever could create this examination hall was certainly a notable individual. There was a wild sense of going all the way down a path of bizarre exploration without ever looking back. Furz slowly twisted her neck. She no longer looked at the snail human and those people, but instead looked ahead of her, at the seemingly endless path before her. Speaking of which, she could no longer remember how long she had walked, or how long she had been here. Time and space here seemed to be chaotic. As an apprentice, Furz's own spatial perception was quite good, she wouldn't be unable to even sense if her path forward was correct. But it was indeed like this here, and as she gritted her teeth and forged ahead, she could only feel her body temperature growing colder, her stomach growing hungrier, yet she couldn't find the correct path to leave this place. This wouldn't do. If she remained trapped here, even if she wasn't cleared from the examination hall due to a drop in mental value below the safety line, she would be cleared due to excessive hunger and a drop in health below the safety line. This would only lead to a dead end. Furz gritted her teeth and walked a bit further, unwilling to give up. The strong scent of meat that had drifted from behind her at some point disappeared. After she could no longer hear the exclamations about the meat's quality or the wild laughter of joy at obtaining food, Furz finally walked to a few twisted, erratically growing giant trees. She rested for a bit, then broke off a few branches from these crooked giant trees, attempting to use ritual magic for a final struggle. However, a Sequence 9 apprentice simply had no suitable solution when facing such a problem. Because of this, Furz had to ask for some external help. For example, design a ritual to directly destroy this forest. She remembered that several books on ritual magic had mentioned specific incantations that, even for low sequence individuals, could produce strong destructive power. However, such incantations might not only affect her enemies but also herself. This brought to mind an incantation Furz had seen and remembered before, which was said to indiscriminately attack everything within a certain radius of the ritualist, including the ritualists themselves, once recited. Should she try it? She hesitated a little. After all, it was said that after reciting that incantation, everything within a certain radius of the ritualist, including earthworms, would be split into 10 pieces. Even the ritualists themselves would be lucky if they weren't bedridden for half a year after being struck. Klein had fallen into a place they had been before. This was the center of Black Vortex Town, by Sphere Lake. While the ritual magic was still in effect and the surrounding wind was within a range Klein could barely control his body, Klein quickly scanned his surroundings and saw a church. Compared to before, that church had become even more dilapidated in the strong wind and heavy rain, appearing a dull gray. Neither before nor now were there any believers here, only a priest who worshipped the stars, suspected to be a member of the Singularity sect from the South Continent who worshipped an evil god. Before the typhoon made landfall, the priest who worshipped the stars had already been dealt with by Anderson, and after they had plundered this place, the church should no longer be dangerous. In the lake next to it, Klein looked at the lake, which was swept by strong winds and heavy rain, forming a whirlpool that seemed to draw in anyone who came near, its true appearance completely obscured by the rain. He took out his revolver from his gun holster, pressed down the bullets, and quickly hid inside the church before the ritual magic ended. In this kind of weather, hypothermia is a terrible thing. I wonder how the other two are doing. In that situation, just stabilizing one's body was extremely difficult. Even if the three of them had been together at first, after being churned for several minutes, they could have landed one in the east of the city and one in the west. Klein's clothes were soaked from inside out, making him very uncomfortable. But now was not the time to consider these things. He didn't care about anything else. After entering the church, he quickly activated his spirit vision, scanned his surroundings, and checked for stability here. At the same time, Klein held a coin in his hand, ready to flip it. As a diviner, performing divination daily was perfectly normal. However, before Klein could perform a simple divination, his gaze, with spirit vision activated in the dark environment, became fixed on the spot where the priest had been killed earlier. There was nothing there, no priest's corpse, nor the head that Anderson had cut off. The body of the slain priest was gone. Was it dragged away, or? A strong gust of wind came from behind Klein. As a diviner, Klein's spiritual intuition stirred, and he almost instinctively threw himself forward, rolling several times on the ground, then quickly looked behind him, at the spot where he had just been. A strangely long arm, as Klein dodged forward and rolled, slammed down with a thud where he had stood. The ground there quickly cracked, and a deep pit was easily created by that strangely long arm. If that blow had landed on Klein, he wasn't sure if his health would have been instantly depleted, clearing him from the examination hall immediately. This is the consequence of killing without destroying the corpse. Klein ground his molars. Why hadn't he suggested burning the priest's corpse back then? The glowing ore symbolizing the stars on the ceiling shook with the monster's attack, rattling and clanging, but the sound was masked by the strong wind and heavy rain outside. After stabilizing his body and clearly seeing the monster that attacked him, Klein quickly fired his gun. With several crisp gunshots, the bullets from the revolver struck the monster lurking behind Klein. It was a distorted creature with its head embedded in its belly, like a strange deep-sea octopus, but with only 4 tentacles, and a bloated body, like a swollen corpse, resembling a giant cadaver. Klein felt his mental value begin to drop. This thing was clearly not right, carrying a scent of mental pollution. The judgment of mental value within the examination hall seemed to also involve whether the things they observed were incomprehensible, indescribable entities, which would vary with the examinee's own level, unlike examination questions where seeing one would definitely deduct 20 mental value. But, in Klein's spirit vision, the aura color of the monster before him, and the faint glimpse of its attire visible through the glowing ores symbolizing the stars on its head, seemed somewhat strange. At the corresponding place where its head should be, it wore a strange object, somewhat like the monocle Leonard often wore. Hey! A soft chuckle came from where the monster was. Klein, without hesitation, fired 2 more shots at the monster before it could attack. The previous bullets hit the monster, but its body was too large, and Klein didn't hit its head. The bullets merely entered its body without striking a fatal spot, making it difficult to inflict a deadly wound. Moreover, the monster's weakness might not even be its head. The resurrection of corpses is actually a spiritual anomaly. The most convenient way to deal with such monsters is to use sealed artifacts from the Sun Domain or ritual magic involving the Sun Domain. However, Klein didn't have time for these, so he could only try to weaken the enemy and then seize the opportunity to act. Facing the bullets fired by Klein, the monster was equally fast. It rapidly crawled on the church walls, dodging the bullets Klein had deliberately aimed at its head. Don't always carry such strong killing intent, it's very rude. A voice Klein had heard before, belonging to the priest who worshipped the stars, possibly from the Singularity sect of the South Continent, came from not far to Klein's left. However, compared to the previous priest, the current priest's voice was mixed with a strange, lowered, yet still discernible excitement. Klein, wait, what's this thing so excited about? But, this thing can communicate. After its first attack missed Klein, the monster leisurely clung to the wall not too far from Klein, seemingly having no intention of continuing its attack. You turned into a monster after death. Klein took a few steps back. He didn't lower his guard, but truthfully, with his physical condition as a diviner, he certainly couldn't easily defeat the monster in front of him. No one here will die, nor can anyone die, even you outsiders are the same. The monster was surprisingly talkative, speaking slowly. Because we will turn into monsters, and you, well, you will leave here. Even if you die, only a riddled body will be left. The body perishes, but the will remains. See, isn't this a kind of miracle? Ah, that guy has been accumulating this kind of miracle. Klein couldn't quite make out the monster's last few sentences, but he quickly understood why it wasn't attacking him. Pedigree and the others said that in a 3 inches level examination hall, if one can solve a 2 level problem, after comprehensive consideration, even examinees participating in the 3 inches level ritualist examination might directly become 2 level ritualists, because this involves relatively dangerous examination questions within the examination hall. The Black Vortex Town 3 inches level ritualist examination hall involves 2 level, or even 1 level examination questions. Are there clues here? Is it related to what's buried underground? Considering this possibility, Klein retorted, do you know why this town became like this? Of course, the monster's voice carried an inexplicable, undisguised amusement. That's a good question. Ah, all of this is because of the stars. Klein frowned, finding the monster's attitude somewhat abnormal. He had previously obtained the notebook of the priest from this church, and the entire notebook was filled with praise and worship of the stars. Logically, a person who died carrying such beliefs, after being contaminated by whatever was underground, should have become even more fanatical in their worship of the so-called stars. But to Klein's surprise, the monster in front of him spoke of the stars very calmly, without any fanaticism or worship. This clearly shouldn't be something a priest who worshipped an evil god would do, especially since this priest was so fanatical when alive. There was no reason for him to become like this after death. A long, long time ago, I'm not sure exactly how long ago, something appeared beneath this land. What thing? Klein watched the monster in front of him. Its slick tentacles squeezed the monocle it wore in its left eye socket, which was located on its bloated, giant cadaver-like head in its belly, and said, a door that attracts all things, connecting inside and out. And there's a doorkeeper watching it. Chapter 311, 310 When in doubt, Leonard. A door connecting inside and outside, and someone watching it. Connecting inside and outside, connecting the inside and outside of what? The inside and outside of the examination hall. And, the person watching the door. A doorman. Klein furrowed his brow in thought, but his revolver was still aimed at the monster clinging to the wall, showing no sign of slackening. After all, even if the other party acted friendly enough, it didn't mean they were genuinely friendly. Didn't it just hit him, almost sending him to meet his great-grandmother? You mean, there's a Sequence 5 gatekeeper of the death pathway underground in Black Vortex Town, watching a door? No, the monster chuckled, shaking the head dangling from its belly. The gatekeeper I'm talking about isn't the gatekeeper from the sequence potion. He, well, is more special. But I can't explain the specific situation in a few words. You'll understand as soon as you go down and see for yourself. As it spoke, the monster once again used its wet, slimy tentacle to pinch the monocle in its left eye socket. Klein's expression shifted slightly. He frowned, looking at the exaggeratedly expressive head, wearing a monocle, that had been cut off by Anderson and was now dangling from the monster's belly. This kind of body structure gave Klein a twisted and absurd feeling, yet at the same time, it also gave him a strange sense of familiarity. Both wear monocles in their left eye sockets, both have this habitual, repetitive action. As a diviner, Klein's spiritual intuition had always been strong, not to mention he had now completely digested the Diviner's Sequence 9 potion. With just a brief contact, Klein sensed a strange similarity. Klein immediately had a guess, but this guess was too shocking, making Klein himself a little unable to accept it. It was as if Leonard and this monster before him had intricate connections that he was unaware of. What's your relationship with Leonard? Leonard Mitchell was a Sequence 7 nightmare of the Night Pathway, and he was the Beander who, along with Captain Dunn Smith, first approached Klein because of the Antigonus family notebook. This Night Watcher's colleague had said some ambiguous things to Klein at St. Peter's Hospital, appearing somewhat mysterious. He often wore a monocle carved from crystal. In Klein's perception, this person seemed to hide a considerable secret, and usually spoke in riddles, giving off a playful, guess, vibe, not serious, which made Klein a little apprehensive. However, as fellow Night Watchers, Klein had many opportunities to interact with this unconventional poet. Yet, each time, this strange poet made Klein feel as if he had a nervous disorder, feeling a bit schizophrenic, never speaking completely, a mumbling fellow. But as fellow Night Watchers, the monocle Leonard usually wore in his left eye, and the one worn in the monster's left eye socket, illuminated by the glowing minerals suspended from the church ceiling, gave Klein an extremely similar texture. This absurd feeling made Klein feel extraordinarily strange and a rising sense of absurdity from within. How could Leonard Mitchell be related to an NPC monster in the examination hall? Could it be that the prototype of this examination hall was related to Leonard? Was Leonard used as a template? Haha, how could that be? Klein quickly dismissed his guess. This guess was too absurd, it was more likely just a mere coincidence. Leonard. The monster pondered the name for a moment, then, both unexpectedly and reasonably, shook its head and said, I don't know him. I haven't heard that name. After all, I've been here for a very long time. Even if there truly was such a person, truly. Feeling the gaze from the spirit world, which was currently watching it, the monster chuckled in a low, hoarse voice, and if it had something to do with me, I, who am now trapped in the whirlpool, wouldn't know about it. The latter part of the sentence made Klein feel something was off, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what it was for a while. Klein frowned. Time was pressing, so he immediately pressed on, trapped in a whirlpool. What else do you know? Why should I tell you? The monster, instead, asked Klein with a strange expression. Klein choked. The monster, however, smiled. How about this? You go down and take a look first, then I'll tell you the other things. How does that sound? A very fair trade. No. Upon hearing this, an alarm immediately went off in Klein's heart. It was such an obvious trap, he would be foolish to listen to an NPC and go underground to face that big trouble. Seemingly realizing Klein's unusually strong refusal, the monster said with a hint of regret, Is that so? You're not going. I thought you would want to know about your... Before the monster could finish its sentence, the strangely twisting monster suddenly shrieked, and its monocle fell out of its left eye socket, hitting the ground with a thud. This monster, whose limbs had grown strangely long, quickly crawled out of the church door. It was as if it had encountered some indescribable, terrifying monster, and in an instant, it disappeared from Klein's sight, giving him no time or opportunity to react. Klein was utterly bewildered. Holding his revolver, he scanned his surroundings like a cat whose fur had bristled in fright, but he found nothing else that could have scared off that monster. What happened? Why did that thing suddenly run off? Klein was completely confused, frowning, trying to deduce something from the monster's words and what he had observed. However, he soon had no time to consider these things. The Church of the Singularity sect was located by Sphere Lake. At this moment, the lake water had overflowed, and a shallow layer of water mixed with weeds and dirt flowed in from outside the church, quickly covering Klein's ankles. Klein immediately had a bad premonition. Ignoring the monocle that the monster had dropped into the ankle-deep water when it fled, Klein abruptly ran to the church door, which the monster had broken open, and looked outside. Outside the door, the typhoon was still raging, and indistinct sounds came from the sky, but those sounds were now gradually becoming clearer. The typhoon was carrying the endless clouds in the sky, like water being drained from a sink, all pouring into Sphere Lake. In the face of such a natural disaster, this church, belonging to the Singularity sect and believing in the stars, would undoubtedly not last long. The building would soon be unable to withstand the suddenly intensified strong winds and the increasing spread of lake water. Klein didn't even have time to steady himself before he was lifted into the air for the second time by the suddenly downward pressing, strengthening wind, and was sucked into the typhoon. The powerful suction, which seemed capable of tearing a person's limbs apart at any moment, made it extremely difficult for Klein to pull out the ritual magic talisman from his pocket. However, This time, the ritual magic's effectiveness against the strong wind was far weaker than before. Because, the effect of this thing, is also strengthening. He was thrown far away, flying through the strong wind, surrounded by swirling buildings, people, and monsters. All those things were converging towards the center of the typhoon, pouring into the lake in the center of Black Vortex Town. Evidently, that lake was the center of the entire Black Vortex Town. Klein even suspected that the passage to the underground, and the culprit behind the strange changes in Black Vortex Town, were all beneath this lake. Under the protection of ritual magic, Klein was thrown out. All around him were clouds, strong winds, rain, buildings, and monsters surging towards the center of the lake. But soon, Klein noticed traces of lightning in this stormy weather. Lightning. Klein's mind froze for a moment. Wait, if he got struck by lightning here, he would die, right? No. Klein looked over sharply. The typhoon's suction was partially offset by the counterforce generated by the ritual magic. He had already left the core area of Black Vortex Town, like a small ball thrown from a height, watching the entire Black Vortex Town pass beneath him in a parabolic trajectory from midair. The dark clouds around him had thinned considerably, and his vision gradually broadened. Klein looked ahead. Clearly, if he were to fall just like this, his destination would be the mountains beside Black Vortex Town, which were covered in strange trees. And on that mountain, large patches were scorched black, and large patches of flame spread. Almost the entire mountain had been completely destroyed by a magnificent force. The dark clouds, which had been entirely sucked away by the typhoon, still stretched continuously over the tops of these mountains, but Klein quickly realized the difference between these dark clouds and those they had seen earlier in Black Vortex Town. The original dark clouds in Black Vortex Town only brought wind and rain, not thunder. Klein's pupils contracted. He watched a bolt of lightning fall from the sky, striking the mountain forest below. Tree after tree of strange appearance in the mountain forest were split into pieces, leaving scorched earth, devoid of life. Soon, with the help of ritual magic, Klein landed steadily, without any injuries. Just as he was about to leave this clearly problematic mountain range, a figure with a blackened face, whose features were indistinguishable, suddenly crawled up from the ground beside him, startling Klein so much that he almost jumped and shot 2 rounds at the unidentifiable thing. "You, cough, it's me. Furs coughed violently again. She looked at Klein with surprise, then with a suffocated expression at the forest, which was now so scorched that its original appearance was completely unrecognizable, wanting to cry but having no tears. "What did you do?" Klein also looked at Furs with a complicated expression, somewhat incredulous, as if asking, "How on earth did you do that?" "Ah, well," Furs awkwardly fidgeted with her equally tattered clothes. "After we separated, I was thrown into the forest outside the town." She briefly recounted her experience, then spoke of what she did after getting lost and realizing she couldn't get out of the forest at all. "I chanted a spell. It's a mysticism spell I saw in a book before, but I didn't expect the effect to be so strong." Klein looked at Furs with an expression that said, "What on earth did you chant?" Furs was also very shocked. How could she have known that spell would cause such a huge impact? If she had known, well, even if she had known, she would have chanted it to escape this forest. After all, according to reliable sources, when in doubt, just chant this spell. So, Miss Wall, what was that spell? After the shock, Klein became interested in the spell Furs mentioned, recorded in a book specifically for ritual magic published by Miskatonic, which could destroy an entire forest in an instant. Could such a common spell have such great power? Klein quickly reviewed the books he had read in his mind, confirming that the beings that ritual magic could establish contact with, as described in those books, could not achieve such terrifying results by merely chanting a name. "It's Leonard." Boom. Another muffled thunderclap sounded in the sky. Furs instinctively closed her mouth and said awkwardly, "Well, it seems even Ruin language can cause problems." Not using Ruin language, which can leverage natural forces, would also trigger corresponding effects. This is because this ritual magic is still in effect, and it automatically responds to the activation spell. As long as the spell points correctly, even without ancient Hermes as a key to open the connected door, the ritual magic can still produce a certain reaction. This is a manifestation of the ritual magic's delayed effect. Although Klein didn't clearly hear the name Furs said, having heard the first few words, he quickly went through the things he knew that could be connected through a true name. Unfortunately, he didn't find it. When Klein said he hadn't seen any books containing similar true names, Furs also looked bewildered, as if saying, how is that possible? Isn't it in the book, Basic Applications of Ritual Magic? Page 27, I remember it very clearly. Furs had been so surprised when she previously saw examples of ritualists almost dying from being struck by lightning after chanting the spell that she firmly remembered that page. She even remembered the exact page number, which made it almost impossible to be wrong. Klein leaned against a withered tree that had been struck by lightning, feeling a bit confused. Why didn't he remember Basic Applications of Ritual Magic, containing such content? Would such a large-scale destructive spell be written in such a basic magic book? Klein expressed his doubts about this. Chapter 312, 311 Digestion complete. That Leo you mentioned. Klein's words were cut short by another thunderous roar of lightning intertwining in the sky. The ritual magic hadn't ended. It seemed that as soon as Klein finished chanting the incantation, the lightning in the sky would strike down without hesitation. Seeing this, Klein immediately stopped speaking. Now was not the time to discuss that issue. He changed the subject, saying, this whole mountain has been struck by that incantation. This is a good opportunity. We should be able to leave here directly. This was the last mission point. The way out of Black Vortex Town was the charred remains of this forest. As long as they crossed this mountain and followed the correct path, they would soon escape Black Vortex Town. Furs nodded. She then seemed to remember someone else and asked Klein, did you not see Mr. Hood? Anderson had helped them a lot. If it weren't for this Sequence 5 hunter, they definitely wouldn't have survived so safely in this examination hall. Just those somewhat scalp-numbing monsters alone would have been enough to give Klein and Furs a hard time. No, Klein shook his head, saying with some uncertainty, his sequence is higher than ours. This place has been destroyed. He should come over if he sees it. He won't encounter any danger. In fact, Anderson had already been directly removed due to his mental corruption dropping too severely after seeing Tang's incomplete mythological creature form, but Klein and Furs didn't know that yet. Furs nodded and didn't say anything like, then let's go find him and leave together. What a joke. Their spirituality was almost exhausted. Were they going to find someone or just be a decoration? Not causing trouble for others was the biggest help, and Furs understood this well. Then let's hurry and go, she wiped the ash from her face. Let's take this opportunity to leave here quickly. Escaping Black Vortex Town, this should be the last stretch of the journey. However, despite saying they would leave immediately, the two still took a moment to rest and recover a little spirituality, so they wouldn't be defenseless if they encountered danger next. After the swirling lightning above their heads subsided, the two lifted their legs and stepped through the completely burned down forest, treading over cracked, charred ground, walking away from the town. This time, there would be no ghost-blocking walls that Furs had encountered before. That incantation had almost leveled the entire mountain. Klein thought, should he also learn this incantation when he returns? In the future, if he encounters something he can't defeat, he could use this suicidal mutual destruction tactic. Black Vortex Town, underground. The monster, now wearing a monocle again, was wriggling its body, approaching the underground mine shaft located in the core area of Black Vortex Town. Within the winding underground passage was a channel that almost ran through the entire labyrinthine structure. The monster raised an eyebrow and slowly wriggled along this pre-existing path towards the core area of Black Vortex Town. The monster's body, like everything that brazenly approached the core of Black Vortex Town, became increasingly twisted and grotesque the closer it got to the core area. However, in front of a monster skilled at deceiving natural laws and principles, such physiological or mental distortion would have little effect on a naturally born mythological creature. Because they themselves are the embodiment of madness and inhumanity, aren't they? When the monster saw the small black sphere, seemingly attracting all things, suspended in the center of the spacious underground mine shaft, constantly drawing in its surroundings, causing typhoons on the surface, triggering mutations, and gradually turning everyone into monsters, the monster slightly raised an eyebrow. It then saw Tang's historical void image standing beneath the sphere, playing poker with the historical void images belonging to Zarathus and Kotar. His voice was not loud, but exceptionally clear as he said, "It seems you're quite idle." Tang heard the voice and looked over. Upon seeing Eamon, who was wearing a monocle, he smiled with great relief. "What, do you want to play too?" He clapped his hands, then, before Zarathus's historical void image could react, he snatched the cards from the other's hand, shuffled them with his own, and directly threw them into the discard pile on the ground. Holding a good hand, Zarathus, who was playing the villain in this game, watched helplessly as his cards were mixed and thrown into the discard pile on the ground. Unfair, this guy is cheating. Kotar, who was having a bit of trouble gripping the cards with his claws, also simply threw his cards into the deck. The entire demonic wolf lay on the ground, looking at the entrance of the underground cave that Anderson had previously blasted open, and pulled out a hat from the historical void image, placing it on his large head. Zarathus looked at these two completely cheating with bad hands, his mouth twitched. Kotar returned his gaze with a very innocent expression. Blame Amon, why did he come here at this time? He's just a historical void image, what kind of cheat can he do? Zarathus was speechless. He should have just stayed on the South Continent. Tang, you're at least a sequence 1 Angel King. If you're going to discard cards, discard your own. What's the logic in taking mine and discarding them? Ignoring Zarathus's muttering behind him, Tang leisurely walked up to Amon, looking at this truly unsightly dirty thing. Amon has this hobby. Likes to parasitize on such dirty things. So that thing was placed here by you. Amon pinched his monocle, smiling, looked at Tang in front of him, then bypassed him, observing the unformed black hole that seemed capable of sucking in all things in the world, all things, as if appreciating a work of art. The problem that Bethel and I couldn't solve before, you've done quite well. In Sanyan Harbor, the power that can be drawn from the annual sea prayer ceremony is getting less and less. I suppose that sealed spaceship, that should be the name, the contents inside have been transferred by you, right? Amon finished admiring the unformed black hole that should have been at the bottom of the sea, then looked at Tang again. What's here should just be a projection. The main body of this thing, you put it on the South Continent. This was a guess, but Amon, as the most top-tier decipherer, his guesses were usually spot on. As for why it could only be a guess, and not a conclusion, Amon reached after a field investigation. The situation on the South Continent was even more troublesome and complex than on the North Continent. Amon, who was only sequence 2 and whose main body could only hide and sneak around, might be hung up as a marionette if he wasn't careful. Naturally, he wouldn't send too many avatars to a completely unfavorable environment to die. However, based on what Amon himself saw, heard, and learned from his paranoid brother, since the Byron Empire on the South Continent had retaken Star Plateau, Pass River Valley, and other places, and the sects had re-established control over that area, the living population on the South Continent was decreasing at a visible rate. Currently, only 1 in 10 living people remained on the South Continent, a complete replication of Ruin's Tingen City, and even worse. Most of the South Continent's people had mysteriously disappeared in the long river of history and time, replaced by diviners, marionettes, resurrected corpses, vengeful spirits born after death, and many unique monsters from the underworld. If ordinary people went there without understanding anything, without knowing anything, they probably wouldn't know how they died until their death. Even the best at concealing their presence, the parasites, or the Black Knights, who were skilled in flesh magic, almost unkillable, and possessed various ways of hurting souls, would die inexplicably within a few days on the South Continent. That place was no longer suitable for the living. Currently, the South Continent is largely sealed off. With the obstruction of the stormy sea, ordinary ships from the North Continent and beyonders who can use the spirit world for teleportation find it difficult to reach the South Continent. The nations of the North Continent know very little about the situation on the South Continent, and even Amon, the blasphemer, cannot influence or participate much in the situation there. However, the Death Church's resurgence, the Byron Empire's re-establishment of control over the South Continent, the birth of a new sequence 1 on the Death Pathway, the Rose School's restraint faction achieving a phased victory and expelling the hedonist faction from the South Continent. Amon was aware of these types of news, whether released intentionally by the person in front of him or accidentally. Also, some strange, clearly extraterrestrial products that shouldn't appear on this planet have also appeared on the South Continent. That thing is very likely to become a channel and medium for those great beings who covet this planet to exert influence on us within the barrier. You know, those great beings always possess many mysticism powers we don't know about and can't deal with. Even something that seems safe can have risks. You should know that. Amon pinched his monocle. So, what kind of cooperation have you reached with some of them? And what are you and my paranoid brother plotting? What are you talking about? I don't understand, Tang shrugged, completely acting like a rogue who had no idea what Amon was saying. I'm just rationally allocating resources and preparing for the coming apocalypse. Amon said, Oh, with a hint of amusement, is that really so? Then, how long do you plan to play this childish game? The apocalypse isn't far off, his lips curved upward. If you don't hurry, there will be big problems. For example, revealing some interesting things to Klein Moretti, watching him break down, watching him go mad because of it. That should be very interesting, just like Rosal. Tang lazily lifted his eyelids and glanced at the thing Eamon was parasitizing. He tilted his head and suddenly asked, "You seem to be plotting something too." He also took out a monocle from the historical void that was extremely similar in appearance, style, and material to the one Eamon was wearing, and placed it over his right eye. "Let me guess, are you planning to switch pathways?" They were both old foxes, why were they playing charades with him? Eamon smiled without speaking. Tang clicked his tongue. "Compared to my side, I'm a bit curious. You've already fallen from Sequence 1 and are maintaining this Sequence 2 state. With the apocalypse imminent, I wouldn't spend most of my energy on catching you. We've been fighting for so many years, I believe we still have that much tacit understanding between us. If that's the case, then why do you repeatedly want to return to Sequence 1, and even advance to Sequence 0? The birth of the Lord of the Mysteries requires at least the uniqueness of error, door, and fool, and one Beander characteristic from each of the three pathways. The fool and error are with Tang, and door is with Bethel, but Bethel is in an exiled state. Unless Mr. Door returns, and Eamon forcibly advances Door against Tang, Nicola, and other gods, the three mystic pathways, in their current situation, even with Adam's help, he absolutely cannot covet them. However, I've heard your marionette say this many times, and I think it seems quite fitting here. Eamon said leisurely, "Everything is both fate and destiny, isn't it?" Tisk. Tang couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Indeed, Eamon was truly annoying. He really wanted to hang his main body up as a marionette. Besides, isn't this what you want? Amon's lips curved upward. After all, I imagine the fallen mother goddess probably doesn't want the Lord of the Mysteries to return, does she? There must be a suitable reason, mustn't there? The fallen mother goddess doesn't want the Lord of the Mysteries to return. The best way is to not let Door return. Even if Door returns, it's because the fallen mother goddess hopes to use it as an opportunity to enter the barrier early and retrieve the problematic mother nest located on the west continent. If this goal cannot be achieved, and with the current best candidate for the Lord of the Mysteries, Tang, completely taking the initiative and very likely to advance to the Lord of the Mysteries in the best possible state, the fallen mother goddess will most likely not allow Mr. Door to return to reality. She would delay for as long as possible, and at necessary moments, Mr. Door, who was jointly exiled by the Lord of Storms and the Black Knight Goddess, would very likely receive the full support of the fallen Mother Goddess, making it extremely difficult for Mr. Door to be killed, only sealed. As a pillar of the real world, the fallen Mother Goddess is one of the complete three pillars. As Eamon said earlier, the power of great beings is immeasurable, and the fallen Mother Goddess might not be unable to do this. Therefore, this requires a small opportunity that allows the fallen Mother Goddess to see that the balance can be broken. Tang propped his chin with one hand and glanced at Eamon. Ah, this guy was even more annoying. Suddenly, Tang turned his neck, seemingly looking into the distance. He felt that his potion was completely digested. The three Sequence 1 potions of the Cryptic Servant were completely digested. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.